What is going on, everybody? It's Tuesday, and we are back at another Right to Real Love live show. Today is going to be a good one. I am joined by my lovely host, my co-host again, Tatiana, and a very special guest, my girl Destiny. What is going on, Destiny?
Hello. It is
So glad.
cold where I am.
Yes. Yeah, you can tell that me and Destiny are in the cold states. We have our beanies on today, so just so you
Aw.
guys know, we just trying to stay warm up here. But Tatiana, how have you been, man? The people haven't seen you in 2 weeks. Let us know what's been going on with you.
I know. I've been out of town, guys. I apologize that I couldn't join you on these amazing situationship and other topics that we talked about, like when the ex comes back. I've been watching. Okay, I've been watching. I love the engagement that our usual crew does in the
Yes.
comments, in the live chat. So I missed you all and I'm glad to be back.
Yes, we're glad to have you back. And let me give some shout outs really quickly. The Dojo Hood of Manhood is in the building. What's going on, Black Belt? Want to say what's going on to Tanisha. Good evening. Good evening. Tiffany is in the building. What's going on, Tiffany? Welcome to the stream. And we got JD in the building. Hello, JD. Good evening. And Katiwe is in the building as well. Welcome to the live stream. Now, before we get into our icebreaker for today, I want to hand the mic over to Destiny for her to introduce herself. Let you guys know a little bit about her. So, Destiny, by all means.
Well, thank you. So, you guys call me Destiny. You can call me Finn. Like, I'm cool with whatever. I am in my early 20s. I'm in northern Michigan. Got about 5 inches and counting outside right now. It's about -2 where I am. So, I'm kind of keeping warm. And I am single in the status of things. And by single, what I mean by that is I'm not married yet, but I am in a relationship. But how I view things is that until you are married to someone, you're single. That's just kind of for clarification with things. But yeah, I don't know. What else do you guys want to know from me?
Nah, that's good. Yo, Destiny, we're excited to have you on here. Today is going to be a really fun show. And
Yes.
before we get into our pre-show, I do want to give a shout out to Katiwe because Katiwe actually sponsored tonight's live stream.
What?
So
Thank you,
huge shout out to
continuance.
Katiwe for sponsoring tonight's live stream. And just to let everybody know, we do have another special guest joining us. She actually is in school. She's on her way home. And when she's here, I'm going to bring her onto the stream. But for right now, we're going to rock out with Tatiana and Destiny. So you guys definitely get ready. So the way our icebreaker works, Destiny, is I'm going to ask you guys three random questions. So I'm going to start with you. You have the option to choose between one, two, and three. I'll give you the question and then we'll discuss it from there.
Number 3.
Number three. Okay, here we go, yo. She's like crossing her fingers, like, oh man, what am I getting myself into? So, question number three is what's your favorite cartoon or TV show when you were a kid?
Ooh, this is a good one.
I didn't have
Right.
a TV as a kid though.
Oh, snap.
Oh man.
So like the only like TV show I've really actually watched is probably Jericho.
Jericho.
Yo,
It's
Jericho.
like it's like a post-apocalyptic kind of TV show. It was like ran for 2 series.
Oh, I
I
don't think I
remember
saw
that.
that one.
Yeah, I remember that one vaguely. Vaguely. Yeah. Because I remember it was like a post apocalyptic show. Because I think,
Hmm.
wasn't it on around the same time as like Smallville?
I think so. I don't know. It aired from like 2006 to 2008 and then
Yeah,
it got
yeah, that's around
cut.
that time. Yeah. Yo, it's weird how a lot of those post-apocalyptic shows don't make it that long unless it's like the zombie shows, right? Unless it's zombies, then it's like, nope.
They're cut.
Right. So before I come over to you, Tatiana, just want to give some other shout out. So JD is like, yo, it's frigid. Yes, yes, the emoji is correct. We're a little chilly up here in Michigan. Cynthia, what is going on? So glad to have you join us. We appreciate it. Katiwe, thank you again so much for your support of this show. And none other than Sim Sia is in the building. What's going on, Sim? Truly appreciate you for joining us on the live show, man. Definitely appreciate it. So, Tatiana, what was your favorite cartoon or TV show as a kid?
Ooh, I liked a lot of them growing up. I definitely remember The Simpsons, especially when I was in the earlier seasons of The Simpsons when it was funnier. Like, it's not as funny now. I mean, the nostalgia is cool and everything, but yeah, those early, maybe first 8 to 10 seasons were really good.
Yeah, The Simpsons was definitely one of my favorite shows coming up. I think that once Family Guy came on the scene, it kind of took the cake for
Mm-hmm.
me. Because like at first I grew up watching The Simpsons, and then when Family Guy came around, I was like, I love that show.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
JD says her favorite was Super Friends. Yo, that's a
Oh, okay.
throwback, man. Yo, the Super
Yeah.
Friends. So Tatiana, do you want question number one or number three?
I'll go with number one this
Oh,
time.
excuse me, number one or two. So you said number one? Okay,
Hmm.
perfect. So question number one is, have you ever been on a road trip? And if so, where'd you go? And did you help with the driving?
Yeah, just that's why I was out of town. I was on road trips.
She like, I'm
um,
living this live in living color. So did you help
right?
with the driving and where'd you go?
Fresh off the road trip. I'm in Florida, specifically South Florida. So a road trip for us is going from where we're at in the Palm Beach area, about 3 hours north to Central Florida, where Orlando is. So
Okay.
once you get on that turnpike, it's a breeze. You just pay the toll. So I had the privilege of driving both ways.
Oh man, so you was driving.
Yep. And we were listening to Right to Real Love on the way back. So,
Oh,
gonna
we
make sure we were
appreciate
caught
that.
up.
We definitely appreciate that. Yo, that's love right there. That's love.
No problem. Gotta
So,
support.
okay, so we got my girl, Miss Pollard, in the building. Thank you so much for joining us on the
Hey.
live stream tonight. We really appreciate it. Katiwe said, "Hey Arnold, there weren't many cartoons about inner city kids." Yeah, I
Hey,
definitely
Arnold was
remember.
fun.
Yeah, we
Mm.
take it back to Nickelodeon. Like when I
Mm-hmm.
was young, you had the Rugrats, you had Doug, you had the whole
Ooh,
lineup back then.
Rugrats. Y'all
No, I'm
remember when
serious.
SpongeBob came out? Like that
Hey,
was the thing. I was
were
in
you
junior high then.
were you ever into like TGI Friday? Thank God it's Friday. Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
Family Matters and all of those
Yep.
shows.
Yep. Good times.
Yes. So, Destiny, what about you? Have you ever been on a road trip? Where'd you
I live
go?
on the road.
She's like,
I
yo,
go
this is
everywhere.
everyday life.
I've been to every state but four on my road trip.
Really?
Wow.
Yo, what are
What's
the four?
left?
I got Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Hawaii.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can get those three of those knocked out in like one weekend for sure.
Hmm.
Hawaii
That is
should be the
true.
last one so you can celebrate.
See,
Yeah.
I'm not really like kind of grooving with Hawaii. I'm kind of avoiding it till last minute. I'm not a warm person kind of weather.
Oh, okay.
Yo, you got the cold weather running through your blood. Like, it's like it's in my veins. I love
Uh,
that. I love that. So Cynthia says, did anyone watch Degrassi? I'll be
I
honest, like I
did a
never
little
took
bit.
the time to touch that. You did?
no.
I did a little bit. After I found out like Drake was on there, I was like, what's this show? What's Degrassi? And like, okay.
Yeah.
So I saw some of those earlier seasons when he was on it.
Hmm.
Then I was trying to get into the newer ones and it didn't click for me. So there were just like several, just
Yeah.
maybe one or two seasons that I really watched all the way through.
Nah, that's right. I'll admit I've never seen Degrassi. Even after or heard that Drake was on the show, like I still never tapped into it.
Young
and
Jimmy in the wheelchair. That's who he
yeah,
was.
and I actually even a few years ago I actually connected one of the young ladies that was on that show, Andrea. Like she was super cool. I met her when I was on YouTube the first time around. And yeah,
Hmm.
man, like it's dope, man. A lot of people in Canada rocking out from Degrassi.
Hmm.
So yeah, they representing. So JD said, yeah, it was a really good show. So let's see. Katiwe says, yes, Cynthia, Fridays after youth service. Yes, the real ones know about that. Tanisha says, I was definitely a Nickelodeon kid. I loved a lot of those cartoons. Yes, Doug, Rugrats. Yeah, those were the
Yes,
go-tos,
Yes.
man. Those were
Rugrats.
yes, Rugrats. So for me, I remember like my road trips. I've definitely done a handful of them. I think some of the funnest ones I have always been with my friends. Like we did
Mm.
a guys trip a few years back
That
when we
sounds
drove
fun.
to Atlanta, and yeah, I definitely did the driving. So
All
yeah,
the way?
no, not all the way.
Oh,
I
okay.
no, but
I
I
like
will clarify. I have done that drive all the way to
Woo.
Atlanta and all the way back. I have done it.
God
Yeah,
bless
it's
your
no joke.
ministry.
What's that?
Woo. I say, God bless your ministry. That is a lot. That's
Right.
a
I
lot.
mean, yeah, that 12-hour drive is no joke. It really isn't. And here's the kicker. Like, I don't even drink coffee.
Whoa. No breaks, no breaks where you just drive all the way through. You break for gas
Well,
and
no,
maybe
no.
food
No, we
or
take breaks. I don't
okay.
drink coffee to like kind of help me push through. So no, we
Hmm.
definitely take breaks. Definitely take breaks.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
Okay.
Morgan has joined us. Let me add her to the stream. What is going on, Morgan?
Hey!
Hey,
Yo,
Morgan.
yes, we are in full effect tonight.
Hi.
How's it going, Morgan?
Good. Sorry for the delay. Sorry,
No,
but
it's all
hi.
good. It's all good. Yo, you was in school getting
No
your learning
worries.
on, and we respect
Mm-hmm.
that all the way. So
Thank
before
you.
we proceed, Morgan, just want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience. Just let them know, your
So
age, your marital status, and just a little bit about you and how they can support you.
Okay. Well, my name is Morgan Tracy J, and I am single and not quite ready to mingle. I am I'm 28 years old, and I have an online ministry called His Daughter's Closet, and I'm also a master's in divinity student right now. And so I'm a busy woman. I have built a nonprofit ministry that has been so blessed by God. Um, And so I'm usually in the office by day at my ministry's headquarters, and then by evening I'm in class. And so yeah, that's who I am. I really don't have the luxury of fully dating right now, but it's a beautiful season, even in the singleness, you know.
Yes, yo, you putting in work. Yo, I love it. You building that foundation and that's beautiful. And definitely make sure you guys support her ministry. I'll definitely have the link. It's already in the description. Same with Destiny's channel. So you guys can go and show them some support. Open it up in a separate tab, hit that subscribe button and show them some love. So Morgan, what we're actually doing right now is we're going through our icebreaker. So what we typically do is ask 3 random questions. We're actually on question number 2. And that question was, let me find it. Here it is. Have you ever been on a road trip? Where'd you go? And did you help with the driving? So what's your experience been?
I've definitely been on a road trip. I did not drive, but I'm in Oklahoma. I'm in Tulsa,
Okay.
Oklahoma. And we went to, I think I went to Atlanta one time. It was like a 12-hour
Oh,
drive
nice.
or 13, but I did not drive. I just chilled in the front seat. But
Oh man, I've never had that luxury. Shout out to you. Yo, I wish, man. Like I sit back and I'll be like, man, what it would be like to just kick back, go on a road trip and not have to drive. Like that would be amazing.
yeah, it was amazing.
So let's see what our chat is saying. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, Dojo, this is live. We are definitely live right now in the building. So Tanisha says, I watched some seasons of Degrassi. I do remember Drake being on there. Okay, okay. Now, JD, yes, no coffee, no coffee. I did the drive all the way from Michigan to Atlanta, Atlanta to Michigan, and never took a sip of coffee. Yeah, believe it or not, it is true. It's facts. Katiwe says, I went to Niagara Falls. I pumped the gas. Yo, that's real. You are a real one. You are a real one. I got you on pumping that gas, but driving, save that for somebody else. So Cynthia says, hey, Morgan, showing you some love. Tiffany showing some love to Morgan and Destiny as well. Tanisha says, I'm looking to take a road trip to Rosemary Beach, Florida. Or now, how's that spelled, y'all? Y'all probably know how to pronounce that better than I do. Is that L's? Allies? Like, y'all
I
know
don't
I'm gonna butcher it.
know.
Ladies, y'all gotta help me out here.
I
Y'all know
haven't.
I'm gonna butcher it. Okay, I'm gonna go with L's. Let's hope it's L's Beach, Florida area in May. I know somebody gonna be in the chat like, nope, that ain't it. That's not it
Like
at all.
Alice Beach, Florida. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe. I think that may be it. She says, Tatiana, have you been there?
No, I had to look that up on the map, and I haven't
Right.
been. I haven't been past Tallahassee, so that's a little northwest. That's a lot northwest of where I'm from. So I hope you
Yeah.
enjoy your trip though to the beach. That's gonna be awesome, especially in May. Like it'll definitely warm
Right.
back up because right now, like North Florida is as cold as any other place right now, except for
Oh
snow.
man, yo. Check this out. So Cynthia says, I drive a lot to DC and to Quebec. I usually like to drive alone. Yo, you a soldier.
Wow.
Driving alone, like driving alone is like if it's mandatory, like I ain't got no other choice. But if we can take other people to help with this drive, like by all means, let's do that. Let's share the love. But check this out. My man Black Belt says he drove 13 hours, 3 days in a row. Man.
That
Now
sounds like me.
yo, like Destiny's like, yo, welcome to the club. So how do you manage Destiny with those long drives?
Well, believe it or not, usually I'd kind of like go drive like a day, stay somewhere for like a week or two, do some filming, rock climbing, whatever I got scheduled.
Nice.
But this past fall, I was in Montana up near Glacier, and I had to be back in Michigan within like 2 days' time for
Oh my
jury
God.
duty. So I literally drove the straight way through, and I like listened to like podcasts and country music to keep me awake.
Yo, like you need that. It's like the fuel to keep you going. Like you seriously need it. I don't know how some people are able to make the drive without a decent playlist. Like you gotta. At least I know I need it. Like I need
Right.
the playlist. I gotta have the music, the podcast, something to keep me going.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's see. We got a few more in the chat. Here we go. So Sim says, I've driven 9 hours twice in the last 2 weeks.
Ooh,
Ooh, wee.
I
Oh
do not
man.
envy you.
Wow. Wow.
That's
Yeah,
a lot. I think my
that's a
threshold
lot.
is 4 hours in a
Hmm.
row.
Wow.
Yeah, but 9, that's whew. God
Yeah,
bless
that's
you.
major right there. That's major right there. So we got one last question before we get into our main topic. Coming over to you with this one more. The question is, call or text, which do you prefer?
Call all day long.
Yes,
Yes,
Oh,
because
stay long, yo.
when
She
you're a
like pick
busy
up the
woman, you
phone.
can't just text all day. Like,
exactly.
call me. Call me. We can have our conversation as I'm running around doing what I got to do.
Hmm.
That's real. That's real. So Destiny, it sounds like you in a similar boat.
Heck yeah, because I can be like video editing, I can be like photo editing, call you up. I can tell you everything in 2 minutes on a call rather than taking 10 minutes to text it out.
That's real. Tatiana, what about you? Call and text.
I like text. I don't like always calling people or them calling me unless we have a set time or something like that. But yeah, I'm just more of a texter, more of a words writer person. So it comes out better if I write or text it out. Hmm.
Nah, that's real. That's real. And I'll be honest, like I can do text up to a certain extent, like, but if we want to have a real in-depth conversation, we definitely need
Hmm.
to hop on the phone. Like, unless it's just, hey, what's going on? Like tapping in with somebody where I don't really need to like set the time aside to make the call. But if we want to really catch up, get to know each other, whatever that vibe may be, definitely got to pick up the phone and have that
Yeah,
conversation for
Hmm.
sure.
I
For
agree
sure.
with that. Yeah.
So let's see what the chat is saying. Cynthia says, call with the exclamation point. So JD says, yep, call. Let's talk. Talking is personal. Katiwe says,
Amen.
text. You can decide when you respond. Yep, that is true. That is true. You do get a little bit of
Very good point.
flexibility. Sim says, same here. Calling for sure. Texting takes too much time. Yeah, yeah. Especially when people try to have like whole conversations. Like, have y'all
Mm.
Hmm.
ever like got into a text conversation and then you looked up and be like, man, it's been like 20 minutes. Like we could have had a legit, like real call in the time that
Right.
we just went back and forth.
Hmm.
Text. Yeah,
Definitely.
I've definitely been there. Cynthia says to add to the road trip part, I catch up with a lot of people during long drives. So I'm assuming you calling, right? Yeah, using
Mm.
the call. That makes sense. That makes sense. Tanisha says call. Okay, okay.
Okay.
My man JD is in the building. What's going on, man? Welcome to the space. He says,
Hey.
family,
Hello.
it's good to be here. I'm a text type of guy. I can't get anything done on the phone, but I'm with Jay. If it's important or trying to get to know someone, set some time aside to talk. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's real. That's real.
Mm.
And one last one. Tiffany says, I like to call, but text when I want to be brief. That's real. That's real.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Yo, so that wraps up today's icebreaker. It's time to get into our main topic of the day, which is boundaries to set to avoid sexual
Ah.
temptation. Yo, y'all
Woo!
are y'all ready,
Well,
ladies? So
So
main
I'm gonna
ready.
kick
event.
it off. I'm gonna kick it off like this, and I'm gonna send it over to you, Destiny. Do you think most single women are setting proper boundaries? Do you feel like that's something they're doing?
I honestly have to say, probably not in our society. And I say that because a lot of times when we think about boundaries, especially like with the topic sexual boundaries, we instantly think physical. And like we put it in a box, we put it to the side, and we forget that a lot of boundaries in every area of our lives are often intertwined. And sexual boundaries doesn't just mean physically, it also means emotionally and spiritually. And so a lot of women, we are very emotionally driven. That's how God has created us to be. And so a lot of times we start this conversation, we start talking to this guy, we're like, oh, he's interested in me, he wants to know more about me. And we forget that we are called to guard our hearts. And we honestly just quickly open up that door and we allow ourselves to get way too quickly, I feel like, emotionally attached to someone rather than having those healthy boundaries of like progression with the friendship.
Yo, that's good. That's good right there. Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's on point. Morgan, what's your take? Do you think most single women set boundaries to avoid sexual temptations?
Well, I feel like if we're talking about just everyday women, no. But if we're talking about Christian women, I think yes. I think a lot of
Okay.
Christian women have stepped up into understanding their body, understanding their boundaries, I think Christian women have really embraced a form of abstinence or purity as myself. And so I think that for single Christian women, yeah, them boundaries is there. But now, like myself, when I once was not Christian, there was no boundaries. The boundaries was what I felt like doing that day, right? And so I'll say if you're a Christian woman, I do believe that we try to put up some boundaries to avoid that sexual temptation.
Nah, that's good. That's good. I like the distinction, and that definitely can differ depending on what a woman believes, what her moral standing and guide is in life. So that's a good point right there, Morgan. What about you, Tatiana? Do you think most single women are setting boundaries?
I think we are good. We can set boundaries. It's another thing to keep the boundaries. And we can get into that because, like, if you're single, not dating, not with anybody, yeah, that's pretty cool. You don't have as many challenges to your boundaries as when you're in a relationship or stuff like that, or dating. So I mean, that's cool. We can set all the boundaries we want, but it's keeping them that we find ourselves to be challenged. And it's a good thing because temptations are going to come. And the word tells us when we are tempted, it's all good. God gives us a way of escape. That means that you're being tested in something that God wants to strengthen you in. He's invested in making you a better person. So yeah, those tests are going to come. It's inevitable. But there's also ways to get out of that too. So I guess we're going to talk about that tonight.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. Definitely. So setting boundaries is one piece of the puzzle, right? I'm curious to come back over to you, Destiny. Do you think that most single women are aware of these sexual temptations, or do you feel like some of them are just not even
I
they have no clue?
I definitely think that as humans, we definitely know and are aware, like when we have temptations or things, whether it's with food or sexual things, or just you want to do something, you want to just go be lazy, watch TV, like you know what you want. Now, the key is if you actually have the self discipline to say no,
That
that's
right
where the
there.
call and like line starts to
Hmm.
draw, because especially like when you are single, like Tatiana, when I was saying, when you're single, it's like, yeah, these are my boundaries, I'm not crossing them, it's good. But then when you actually get in a relationship and those emotions start to play up and whatnot, and that love, in a sense, as Songs of Solomon starts to play, it starts to be awakened and aroused, it gets a lot harder. And you're like, oh, but I want to cuddle and I want to do this and I want to do that. And that's where those boundaries actually get tested on, if you're going to stand on stone or if you're going to slick into sand.
Oh man, that is so good. You're dropping gems already, Destiny. Before I come over to you, Morgan, just want to point out this chat from Tiffany. She says that is so true. Keeping them is so difficult. Yes, they are. They are. And JD says T, yes, truth. Definitely. Definitely. Both of y'all dropping gems. And once again, Katiwe says so true, Destiny. It is very true. So, Morgan, what's your take on women being aware of the sexual temptations? Do you think many of them are or no?
I think we try to be while
Hmm.
we're single, we try to be aware. But then when we start, like she said, Tatiana said, like when we get in a relationship, it's like those desires start shifting, you know. So I think we do try to be aware as much as possible. But I will be honest, just from myself, from ministering to women, I see a lot of times where those boundaries really quickly drop so fast just because he looks like the one, or he like the one, or he embodies everything you ever wanted. And then
Well,
those boundaries throw out the door, and then you're standing there and you are struggling with your purity, or you're struggling with your abstinence, you're struggling with your walk with God now. Like you're struggling in all these different areas. And so I think the real point here is, if we acknowledge that, hey, it is a little easier when we have nobody pressing us, but the moment we're in a committed relationship and begin to fall in love, that struggle gets different.
right.
When we acknowledge that, then we can put some boundaries up. We can kind of be honest and open with our significant other as well, and say like, I'm
Hmm.
struggling, bro. Like, back up. You know what I mean? Type of deal.
That's good.
Ah, that's good.
Thank you, Morgan.
And you bring up a good point, and I'm curious, Tatiana, do you feel like it's more challenging for women to avoid falling into those sexual temptations when they're single or when they're in a relationship?
That's a good question. I mean, there's different sexual temptations that people can face in a relationship or in singleness. So I guess it depends on the person, right? Because some people struggle with masturbation versus other people struggle with fornication. So both are sexual, you know, wrongs, but you know what I'm saying? It just depends on that individual and what they're going through in that season, I think.
It does.
No, that's good. Anything you want to add to that, Destiny? Which one you
Well,
think is tougher?
no, well, what I'm thinking is, there's this, it's on topic with that is the boundaries. Something that I definitely talk with my friends about and like girls that I mentor and whatnot is you both, when you get into a relationship, you need to set the boundaries at the very beginning. You both need to come together, and you need to have boundaries for emotional, physical, spiritual, and then dating, engagement, marriage, like what that looks like. And then you both need to go to your separate quiet times with God and like find what you feel. And then as you write down, like, let's say you're a very big physical person. So physical temptation is a lot stronger for you, where it's not as much for them. So they're okay, side hugs, cuddling, but you would prefer just, maybe a hug every now and then, but you want to kind of keep it to a minimum. That's where when you guys come back together, you guys go through those things. Okay, what do you have? And whoever has the higher one instantly is that boundaries. And then it goes back to having accountability partners in your life, like really just connecting with them, constantly talking with them, being open about like where you're at, what you're struggling with and whatnot. And when you do feel that temptation, and like I have accountability partners, like when I'm struggling with stuff, I'll text them up, even if it's like 2 a.m. and I know they're not going to reply. I know in the morning they're going to be like, yo, so did you survive that temptation or did you give in? And then that is usually enough for me to be like, nope, I'm going to flee from the temptation. I'm going to put my thoughts back on Christ.
Yo, y'all are dropping
Good.
gems already. Already, I love it. I love it. So we did have a question. Dojo was saying, "Is this a Christian channel, bro? Not an issue. Just asking." So we discuss things from a multiple different facets and faith identities, right? So tonight we are discussing things from the perspective of women who identify as Christians, but that's not every show. But tonight I think it's very important for us to have these conversations because there are Christian women out there who deal with these sexual temptations, and we want to address what can they do. So I want to bring on women who identify as Christians so that they can share some gems, some insights on what other Christian women can do to navigate this space. But when you come over here to Right to Real Love, we're looking at things from a variety of different perspectives. Some nights it may be from a Christian lens, sometimes it may be a different lens. But I want you guys to know that we're open to have these open, honorable, and respectful conversations. So yeah, that's what it's about over here. So Tiffany was saying, teach, Destiny, teach. Yes, you are dropping so many gems. What's going on, Ebony? Welcome to the show. She says consent boundaries is really an important issue to address. Yes, it definitely is. It definitely is. And we want to dive into that today for sure. JD says, when she was a younger woman, she thought as a Christian that she would not struggle with temptation. And she found out. Oh, let's talk about that. So I'm coming over to you, Morgan, because you mentioned that there was a time when you weren't a Christian and now identifying as a Christian woman. When did you come to that place where you're like, oh, I actually might need to navigate these waters a little bit different now?
Yeah. I think it was like right after I got saved. No one really was like, you shouldn't have sex anymore. No one said that, but it was just like the conviction was different. So it was like the same dude, but I was the same girl, but the conviction was at a different level. And so for me, that's kind of was the journey into purity and abstinence for me, because I couldn't take the conviction anymore. So that's kind of how mine started. But being not a Christian woman, there was no conviction. Like there really wasn't. I didn't have that moral compass saying like the biggest conviction was like, girl, don't get pregnant. Like that was your biggest conviction, back then. And then once you get saved, you have this different moral compass. You have this level, you have the Holy Spirit in you, you have conviction all around you. And you're like, I just did this before and it didn't change anything. But now today doesn't feel the same. Like you need to go. It don't feel like something's off. And it's not that you change, it's that the Spirit is now in me. And so I'll say that's kind of what has shifted my journey into my walk. Because I will say, like, it says we can grieve the Holy Spirit. And I know I did at times in the beginning because I didn't understand what was going on. And so I wanted to keep doing things my way. And so I know at times I did grieve the Holy Spirit. But what I will say is like conviction is real. It takes your peace, man. Like sin takes away your peace, it takes away everything. And so when you're living in sin, it's like, it's better to be in my daddy's house than to be dealing with all this extra stuff. Like that's how I felt over time. And so it was just like it was the only option to stop doing that thing because there was nothing that could compare to peace.
Yeah, peace is real. Like I tell everybody, having peace in life is vitally important. And when you have identified things that are hindering or diminishing the peace that you have to address it immediately. At least I feel like I do. I feel like when I'm in those spaces and I feel like my peace is in jeopardy, nah, something has to change as soon as possible. So nah, that's good. So we had a comment come in from Andre. He says, as long as women continue to give boyfriends and husband benefits, they will continue to get hurt. Look, you got the snap spot, man. Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So I'm curious, Tatiana, from your perspective, do you feel like Christian women tend to struggle with, setting these boundaries and knowing what temptations to look out for?
Yeah, I think they can without the proper teaching. I always have some kind of caveat to your questions. I'm sorry, but yeah, it could be a challenge if they don't have anybody to teach them, right? Like if they don't have that accountability partner to walk with them, like Destiny was saying, or if they didn't have that, if they didn't have someone to tell them, like, yo, you probably shouldn't be having premarital sex anymore, like Morgan was talking about. If there's no one to introduce them to a better way of living this Christian life, like discipleship, then if they don't have that initial conviction that they have through the Holy Spirit, then they might not, have those boundaries or feel like they're going to run into temptation or fall to temptation. Because the reality is we can't avoid temptation. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be around, even if you are walking in purity for 100,000 weeks, like whatever you want to call it, it's still going to be there. Jesus was tempted, but he gave us a solid example of how to respond to it. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but I just wanted to answer your question real quick.
Nah, that's good. I appreciate that. So we did have another comment come in from Andre. He says, if you are true to following what the Bible says, then you should have no problem doing this. And then we got a really good question that came in from Black Belt. Ladies, he wants to know, what are husband benefits? So I'm going to send it over to you, Destiny.
Okay.
How do you define a husband benefit?
Well, good stuff.
I got like 10 different things that come into my head when I hear that.
Let's
So I'm just gonna run
Let's
with
get
them.
it.
Husband benefits are something that you would do with somebody that you wouldn't do with anybody else. That I feel like is just like the top of the iceberg kind of thing, because you're not gonna see me like hugging every guy I meet. You're not gonna see me kissing every guy I meet. I would consider husband benefits. It's those boundaries. And then with that, it goes back to what is being like a lot of times, like with that question, you have the flip side are what are wifey duties, and like that's a lot of things that we're seeing as part of that, like husband benefits is you got a lot of girls that are like, in a sense, doing wife things, getting his laundry, doing all this kind of stuff for him and basically being like a wife, but they're not married either, And so with that, it goes back to like every relationship should start with a friendship. And so until you are married, it's in a sense still just that friendship, that brother and sister in Christ. And that's where it goes back to what would you not do with another brother? You probably shouldn't be doing it with them until they are your husband kind of thing. That's where I guess I'd leave it off for iceberg.
Nah, that's good. I appreciate you for sharing that. Before I come over to Morgan, just want to point out a few of these comments. So Tiffany says, it's so hard as a woman of faith to avoid sexual temptations. I don't identify as a Christian, but I govern my life by biblical principles. Yeah, that's real. That's real. JD says, I think that a part of the problem is that we've been sold the lie of quote unquote dating. We were never meant to quote unquote date multiple people, nor is dating supposed to be long term.
Amen. I love that because that is my mindset and that's how I look at things is dating is a very worldly concept. You don't see that in the Bible. You don't see that anywhere. What you do see is friendship and do not arouse or awaken love until it's meant to be awoken. There isn't that in between that we've created in our culture. And it isn't even in the Bible, it isn't what our culture has created because in our culture, we create this thing of dating, we put labels on so much and instantly with the mindset of dating, then it's like, oh, now I have the benefit and the right to get slightly physical with these people when that's not true at all.
Say that. There's a certain entitlement that comes with worldly dating that, yeah, you should give your bodies over to someone when you shouldn't. And a lot of people try to justify it. But that was a good point you made there, Destiny.
So Ms. Pollard says, JD, I agree. I personally think that there's no need to date past 3 months. So there's a time limit on it.
I have a follow-up question for that.
Similar to Katiwe's question.
Right. I'm over here like 3 months, baby. I don't know you.
No. I don't agree. I
have questions. Go ahead, Morgan.
But I do understand the question about the husband benefits.
Yes.
I think the key here is submission. You should not submit to a man unless he's your husband. That's key. You do not submit.
Mic drop.
Okay. And the thing is, if he is not a man of leadership and a man that has revealed that's if God hasn't revealed that, he hasn't stepped into that, y'all haven't stepped into that place, you do not submit anything. You don't submit nothing to him. Okay. And now you are respectful, you are honorable, all that. You just do not submit.
Well,
Submission is not given to that man. Now let's talk about the 3 months. Okay, sis. This is what I would say.
let's
I
clarify.
don't agree. Yeah, let's clarify the 3 months, because the reality of it is, when you know you have a lot coming with you, when you know the man that's going to cover you is going to lead ministries and cover your life and cover your children, you need more than 3 months to see if that is the type of man God is calling you to be with. You need more than 3 months to understand that maybe there's some cracks in his character that God needs to work on. You know, you need more than 3 months. So to me, I look at it as, when I'm carrying a lot and I know this man is getting ready to cover this whole thing, including me and my children, I can't connect myself to just anybody, because that's detrimental to my future.
Mm-hmm.
It's detrimental. So I would encourage you. Now, I'm not saying you might not know he's your husband in 3 months. You might know that. But the first thing is, we got to think of the fruit of the Spirit. Love is patient and love is kind. Let's talk about that. It's patient and it is kind, you know? And so the thing is, key is, patience is a virtue. We see it all through the scripture. We see it all through Proverbs. All about the wisdom is being patient, being patient. And so I think that's the key. Even with the dating, let's be patient, because just as a man connects his life to a woman connects her life to a man. And now there are new aspects into this thing. And when you're a woman that is carrying a lot, you can't connect your life to just anybody. You want a man that is going to expand you, not diminish you. You know, and some, for me personally, I have not found that in 3 months. It's had to take multiple months for me really to see that, is this man someone I'm willing to connect my life to, that's going to expand what God has already put inside of me, not diminish it.
Nah, I appreciate you for sharing that, Morgan. And context is so important. Like, anybody that knows me knows that I'm huge on context. So I do want to go and point out something. So Miss Pollard shared some context. She was admitting that she's a lot older than you ladies on the panel. So she is speaking from the perspective of an older woman. So for her objective and her thought process to it would be a lot different from you guys. So I think that we have to take that into consideration too. I think if you were talking about a younger woman who is saying that she only wants 3 months, I think that would be a lot different from a woman who's more mature and has different, let's just say, qualifications that she's looking to meet in a partner. So I think that's really important for us to be aware of as well. So just wanted to point that out, but not taking away anything from what you said, because I think it does have some relevance, especially when addressing younger women. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out, and also let you guys know that Miss Pollard's not coming out of left field. Like, there's a rationale and a reason behind her waiting for just 3 months. So just wanted to point that out. So let me see.
Amen.
There was a few other questions and comments. So first one, what's going on, Krista? So glad to have you joining us. She says, I think if you know people who can vouch for his character, I can see how 3 months can happen. Yeah, like it can definitely happen. Yeah, for sure. So then let's see. We said, okay, Katiwe said, I need at least 4 seasons. So
that's what I said.
There you go. And I'll be honest.
Go ahead.
No,
Jim.
go ahead, Tatiana.
Oh, I was just gonna say real quick that, I mean, 3 months can happen. It can happen sometimes too, as we've heard so many bad things happen. Like, oh, you know, people fall in love real quickly, get married, and then stuff happens. But also, God can move in a miraculous way in 3 months. You know what I'm saying? So it's a matter of the quality of conversations that you're having, the questions that you're asking, vetting this person properly, and letting God lead you both in this, because marriage is serious, you know. So when someone hears 3 months, we think of all the stuff that could go wrong, but we should also think about how we can best make the most of our time getting to another person and vetting them in that 3 months.
Right. And the one thing that I would say as well, you know, just kind of taking the position of Miss Pollard to kind of balance our conversation out, right, is I think you also have to take into consideration whether or not there's history with that person, right? I think we're also making the assumption that it's somebody you just met, somebody that you don't know, that's not connected to you or anybody else in your circle. So that's another reason why you could see it happening in 3 months or a lot faster period of time than that. So just wanted to point that out as well. Let's see. So want to give a shout out. Ebony has joined us. What is going on, Ebony? So glad you can join the stream. She says, I think it depends on how old you are, right? And that definitely plays a part. I think that type of context matters. So then Tiffany says, yes, 3 months isn't long enough for her to try the spirit or the character, but it can happen in rare circumstances. Yeah. And sometimes it may not even be rare, right? Like I think oftentimes we look at things as rare because it's not happening for us or people that we know, but that doesn't necessarily mean that by default is something that is a rare occurrence, just to point that out. Ebony says the Holy Spirit can tell you at any time. That's real. That's real. My man Black Belt says I wouldn't even consider it until 2 years. So this is important. Getting a man's perspective on this topic is important because there's
Yes.
two people in the relationship, right? So like
Right.
the woman may have one interest, but the man has a completely different interest. And with that being said, like we have a man about to join us on the panel to share a male perspective. My man JD, what is going on, JD? Had to bring you up, man, just so that you could come on and share a male perspective. So, what's your take on the current topic that we're diving into right now?
Man, you see me rubbing my hands together, right? Can y'all hear me all right?
Yes, man, we can hear you loud and clear.
Listen, man, it's good to be here. But I was just listening, man, while I was making my dinner. But I got to push back on a couple things, and this is gonna sting a little bit. But first of all, let me say about the time frame. See, we were never meant to date anybody long term. Matter of fact, we were never meant to date anybody, period.
Mhm.
Because back in the day, what people would do was if you came from an upstanding family, right, and you knew a young lady that came from an upstanding family, that man would go to that woman's family father and say, "Hey, I'm interested in your daughter. This is what I got going on. I make this amount of money. I go to church. This, that, and third. These are my people." His people would talk to her people, and they would kind of, get a feel for who they are and say, okay, I think you're a good match for my daughter. I think your daughter is a good match for my son. And then they would get together, get to know each other. And within a month's time, they were married, right? So we've been sold this lie about dating. And now in 2022, we date not with the intention of getting married or being serious, but we date with other intentions in mind. Try to play the field, get to know each other, figure out what you like or what you don't like, when we need to be finding the person that's right for us, and vice versa. You know what I'm saying? So I think that that's a big part of the problem, and you should be able to know somebody within 90 days. I say this all the time on my channel, and the reason that I say this is because, these days and times, people are not usually as genuine as they used to be back in the day, right? So I always say, and I tell men this on my channel all the time, if somebody is putting on a facade and faking who they are, they cannot keep up the act past 90 days without showing some kind of red flag. I'm a witness to it because I was in a couple of situations to where I saw the red flags early on, but I pushed on with the situation anyway. And then that ended up putting me in a bad spot. So I think that if we use the resources being our family to help vet somebody, I think that would eliminate a lot of the problems and the issues that we have with dating. Now, also, when you get to a certain age, this is especially for the ladies. If you come across a gentleman who is not marriage minded, you should not even go on a date with them. Okay. And if you go on a first date with them and you find out that they're not marriage minded, they don't get a second date. If they're not on the same type of time that you're on, not a Christian, don't believe what you believe, wants to cross your boundaries, they don't get a second date. Don't string things along hoping somebody will change, because a lot of times people will show who they are up front, right? It's just that we don't want to accept that. Well, he looks like what I want him to look like, so I'm going to overlook the fact that he doesn't go to church, or I'm going to overlook the fact that he wants to cross my boundaries. And it's the same thing for the fellas too. It's time out for us to stop looking at things in fear, scarcity, and lack. Because I don't know about y'all, I don't have the time, nor do I have the patience or the energy to even deal with people that's not on the same type of time that I'm on. You feel me? So, y'all got to excuse me. Can y'all bear with me for a second? We got a long
Yeah.
way to go. So, someone said something about relationships should start as friends. Uh, I have to push back on that because I think that things kind of get misconstrued, because if you're dating with intention and really dating with the intention of getting to know somebody, I don't want to be your friend. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying. I'm husband minded. I'm marriage minded. I don't want to be your friend. I want to be your husband, your leader, your protector, all of those things, right? And I think that that's another problem too, because uh, if you're starting out as just friends, that opens up room for somebody else to slide in and take what you're trying to get. So, one more thing, and then I'm going to surrender.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I got to rock right now. One more thing, and then I'm going to surrender. I
Okay.
also heard somebody else say that you should not submit if you're not married. And y'all see, I wrote all my notes down, so we doing good. I think that that's a problem too, because if you're actually searching for somebody who is marriage minded, then they are going to know, and I'm speaking for the men, they are going to want to know that they have a wife that is cooperative. And that's all that submission really means, is being cooperative and being under the mission. So if you don't establish what the mission is up front, and you don't submit to that mission, then I think that you're already starting off on a bad foot. Because I know we say a lot of times, don't give wife benefits without being a wife. It's the same thing without being a husband. You know what I'm saying? So if that's the case, then why should I spend my resources on you if you're not my wife? Why should I spend my time protecting you if you're not my wife? Why should I spend my time covering you in prayer if you're not my wife? That's what a husband does. So when we go looking at things through fear, scarcity, and lack, we're already setting up ourselves up for failure. You don't have to go into things waiting for it to go bad. Does that make sense? I think that if we go
Mhm.
to things in good faith up front, and then know what your intentions are, and trying to get what the other people's intentions are, then you won't even waste that time. You know what I'm saying? So, like I
Right.
said, if you go on a couple dates and you figure out, hey, you know what, you're not marriage minded, this is not the type of time I'm on. I don't want to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a relationship and not be married. I also think that after a year, one season, one summer, spring, fall, winter, you should definitely know. After 90 days, you should know if you want to go forward. And after a year, you should definitely know, hey, we finna get married. You know what I'm saying? And I'm talking about this group of men over here. I'm not
Yeah,
talking
from
about the
mid chat,
poopies
right?
and
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
just to
not
point
talking
that out.
about the poopies and the Ray Rays over here. So yeah, I'm going to surrender the floor now. I've
Oh
taken up
man,
enough time.
JD, I appreciate you, brother, for coming up and sharing the male perspective. Like that is definitely one of the things that we want to highlight here, because I love having these conversations with the ladies, but I think it's really important for us to ultimately hit our mission, which is helping women to better understand and interact with men. So that's the reason why I brought JD up here, Destiny Morgan, just so that he can share the male's perspective with us. And before we continue on with our discussion, but not JD, I know you got your show in a little bit, man. I appreciate you tapping in. And by all means, if you ever want to hop in on another live, just let me know. But thank you again for joining us tonight, bro.
Hey, I appreciate you, man, and I also extend the same offer to you, man. Ladies, y'all are doing an excellent job. Thank y'all so much. I gotta run, but y'all be
Thank
All
you,
right.
easy.
JD.
See you soon,
Thank you.
JD.
Thank you.
All right, yo, ladies. So
Jay,
you
it's
got to
getting.
hear
Oh my
what's
gosh,
that?
the comments are amazing.
I
Before
know, right? Like the chat is on fire right now. There's
it's
so much
lit.
going on right now. Yes, right
I
here.
wanted to say something real quick before we
Of
get
course.
into it. I know JD left us, but there's a scripture that reminded me like what he was talking about in regards to how men and women should treat each other. Like it brought me to like First Timothy chapter 5, where he was getting given instruction like for treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters with absolute purity. So there is some level of respect that we need to have for each other, some level of protection and guarding that we should have. It shouldn't be resolved for a certain title or aspiration that you have for that person. It should be a mutual understanding like you're a sister or brother in Christ. Therefore, I want to look out for you, I want to protect you. There's some level to that. I do understand that there's some extra levels and benefits that you have with within a marriage relationship. So let's be mindful of that too, that we do have to have that mutual respect, that mutual honor for one another. That can be done within a non-dating, platonic, everyday situation. And so that I think you shouldn't like put one in one category, like respect is only for someone you want to marry or date. It should definitely be because you are my brother, my sister, because you
Right.
are my neighbor. It comes down to those basic stuff. So I know he knows that. I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure
Yeah,
that we talk about that as well.
that's good
most
though.
definitely.
That was great.
Yeah.
Can I?
Destiny, coming over to you.
I want to say something to add on to what she was saying. Is it
Yes.
goes back to is what is love? You know, if God is love and we are in God, then we are of love. But what does love truly mean? Because we use this word in our culture, but I don't think we will ever truly fully grasp how deep the understanding is. Because A, we don't really take the time, but B, we are still imperfect until we are knitted together back with God, like in heaven and whatnot. But love is patient, love is kind, it protects, it trusts, it hopes, it preserves. The greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God and then to love your neighbor as yourself. And I feel all too often we don't protect ourselves. Therefore, we don't know how to protect others, because to truly love and have that balance for love your neighbor as yourself, you need to first understand what love is and to love yourself and have the respect for yourself and have that protection of those boundaries, but then to also want to protect that brother or sister in Christ with those same boundaries because they are God's chosen child just as you are.
Amen.
Nah, that's
Yes,
amazing. Yo,
amen. That
coming
was
over to you,
good.
Morgan.
That was
What's your
good.
take having heard what JD was sharing and any other gems you want to drop?
I definitely agreed with so much he said. I gotta give it to him. There was so much I definitely agree with, and definitely getting a male's perspective helps you
Absolutely.
understand where men are coming from. Especially the dude in the comment who said not until 2 years. I was like, what? But then we got a male's perspective that said 1 year you should like be good. That's kind of how I am. I'm more on the
Mhm.
1 year vibe. So that was really good. Also, too, I will say though, there were some parts I didn't agree with. Kind of like Destiny and were saying, where it's like, if you want me to, if you want me to be the husband, then you need to be doing these things. The reality is, I think in the beginning, like I said, we should honor the man, but I do believe in the beginning you should not submit until you have gotten direction by the Lord, but also that man has revealed that about himself. So that might be within the 90 days. I don't know, depends on that journey, but I do believe that submission comes over time, and a man doesn't have to pull you into submission. You actually, because you're walking with the Spirit, you will naturally submit to that leadership, you know. So I do believe submission is not something you force. I believe submission is not something that is, I like you, you like me, I wanted you to marry me, we're gonna submit now. I believe submission is a journey, and I believe many married couples who've been married for years, they still go through different levels of that woman's submission. You know, it's different levels to it. So that's kind of something I would give a take on that. But I think he was really great. Also, Tatiana, her scripture was right on point. I loved it. And I just think that's kind of the basis of how we should operate and honoring our brothers, you know. And I always say this, when I see a man, I have to remind myself, how would I be with this man if he was a married man? Right? I think like that. So it's like, would I be, even though we're doing ministry stuff, would I be chatting with him late about? No.
That
If that was
part.
a married
Yeah.
man, I would
Mm.
not
Have
do that.
boundaries.
Right? So those are boundaries, right? So I always look at men, especially when we're in the beginning stages and I'm nothing for him, he's nothing for me. I always look, how would I operate with this man if he was married? If he was married, if we went to get food, his wife would be there too, right? Right. So it's like I have to first think of that mindset. And would I be coming to his place if he was a married man? No, unless his wife was inviting me over. Right.
Listen,
So there's just things like that you have to put boundaries in, and that will help protect you in the long run.
For sure. That's
and
good.
and to add on to like what Morgan was saying about submission, is in that same chapter, in that same paragraph, it talks to submit to Christ. And like when you are single, you are not married to a man and you are not married to a woman. Like if you're a guy, you are first submitting to Christ. Christ will always be your first love. Your relationship needs to be here before it can ever be here.
That part.
Secondly, it also says a man submits to his wife as a wife submits to her husband, because it goes back to the covenant of you're selflessly giving to each other. And that's what grows a relationship in godly biblical love.
Good job, Destiny.
Now,
Good job, girl.
now, that's a good point. Now,
Amen. I need a shirt that says "Read the whole scripture." Like we all need, we need to see more of that. Thank you,
yes,
you, ladies.
y'all getting so much love in the chat. Y'all are on fire. So many comments, I can't possibly read through all of the ones that have gone by, but keep it coming. And if something says, I'll
so
definitely dive into it. But I want to come back over to you for a moment, Destiny, because I saw the ladies y'all snapping with the submission thing, and I agree. Like the word definitely says that, both the man and the husband are submitting one to another, right? I'm curious, from a woman's perspective, what does your husband submitting to you look like? Well, what does that look like to you in a marriage?
To me, like as my journey, as I get closer to this season of marriage, because I am in that point, within a couple months, I will be getting married. It definitely has those things of, it goes back to like what I was saying, is you both are submitting to each other. It's that selfless love. It's the love and respect, And so a husband submitting to his wife is what God calls of a biblical man: to protect, to lead, to love. It's patience, it's kind, it's gentle, it's all those character traits that come and flow out of love. And it's vice versa, because honestly, when you are submitting to someone in a biblical aspect, because in this culture, I feel like a lot of times we have this word of submit. We're like, oh, you're a doorstep now. You're just a doorstep. Like that's all you are. You're just submitting, you're the doorstep. But that's not what submission is. Submission is saying, you know what, I love you and I'm laying down my life for you. It's that covenant aspect of that sacrifice. And so when you are submitting to them and they are submitting to you, you are laying down your life for them, in a sense, as Christ laid down his life for us. That's what the relationship is. And then you also know that the more you feed into them selflessly, as love is selfless, but in our culture, we often view it as selfish. You'll know that the more you feed them and they're growing, the more they're feeding back to you. And it's a win-win. But a lot of times we have that flip view of, you need to give me what I want and then I'll give you what you want. And that doesn't work.
Got you. I appreciate you for sharing that. And JD stood up, gave us the man's definition. So he says, a man submits his wallet, protection, and leadership. And I have to agree. I think that all three of those things are being submitted to a certain extent, because you're doing it together in that union of marriage, right? Because a man isn't just, to the point that you were making earlier, like I think it was a great example that Morgan gave. If this is somebody else's husband, right? Like you wouldn't expect another woman's husband to hand you his wallet. You wouldn't expect him to protect you in the manner in which he protects his wife. You wouldn't expect him to lead you in the way that he leads his wife. Now, let's be clear. There are some of those types of protection and leadership that would be applied on a general sense, right? But we also understand that there are certain types of protection and leadership that's only going to be applied to your spouse. And I think that is what JD is referencing. So I think that that's really good. And, definitely try to tap in and get the male's perspective. But here we go. So there was a question that I had missed earlier from Dojo. He wanted to know, are you guys against or for divorce? So he wanted to know your perspectives on that. So let's start with you, Morgan. What's your take on divorce?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm definitely not for divorce, but I will say,
let me clarify. His question is, do you believe in it? So let me be very specific to his words. Do you believe in divorce?
So do I believe in divorce? I believe if that covenant is broken. Definitely. I believe in divorce. If the covenant was broken, if that individual, one of the individuals stepped out against their marriage, and also too, if the love is not aligning to the love of Christ. I feel like if the man or the woman is not loving the individual as in Christ would love his church, how Christ says, give up yourself for your wife, right? If the man or woman isn't doing that, then I do believe in doing that divorce, because I have definitely seen, even my own parents, a lot of physical abuse, but then stay, because you can't get divorced, right? Can't get divorced. And then, like, growing up seeing that, it was always like, why not just get a divorce and you won't be having a black eye? That's kind of what my mindset was. And then years later, they finally divorced. And it's like, you realize some things you get attacked. People connect themselves to things too soon, and they have not went through their full healing and their full revelation of God. So I will say, do I believe in divorce? I believe that if that covenant is broken, I believe if that covenant is not founded on God, then yes, I believe that you can. However, I do not suggest that if you're just a random person who just fell out of love today or last week. I definitely don't say that, but I definitely say if there is a form of, mental, physical, spiritual abuse in that nature, which there happens to be a lot in marriages, then I do believe that you have the right to divorce your partner.
All right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on
You're
that.
welcome.
Destiny, what's your take? Do you believe in divorce?
I'm gonna try to sum this up because this could be a whole 2-hour conversation. No,
Give
because
us the Cliff Notes version.
I'm doing that right now in my head. I'm lining them up. It goes back to covenant versus contract versus, are you living to honor God or are you living to please the world? Because a lot of times in our culture, in the worldly standard, we look at things as a contract. We look at marriage as a contract. And so it's like, oh, I fell out of love. I'm going to just divorce, undo the contract, yada, yada, yada. But we forget the covenant part, because a covenant is how God designed marriage. He designed it as a covenant between two people. That's why there's the blood sacrifice, because covenant is always made with sacrifice. It's always made with a blood sacrifice. And when you have sex, there is that whole area. And so with that, in the Bible, it clearly lays out the lines of gauges for divorce, with the abuse, with the sexual immorality, with all that. But then it also says, if you are a believer and they are not a believer, you are in a relationship with somebody, you come to know Christ, this, that, or the other, and you can live peacefully with them, then he says to do so, as your faith will bring about them, hopefully, into his realm. So I do believe that there are standards to where if it is unhealthy and it is putting you in danger, or it is putting somebody else in danger, like your children, or that's where you need to get a divorce. Because I do think that there are things that it's no, this is totally unhealthy. It is not of my it's not a biblical, physical, emotional, it's not safe. Then yes. But if you're just, oh, I'm on 11, you don't want to work towards it because you walked into that commitment till death do you apart and you're just not feeling it, that's where I draw the line and say, no, you're breaking covenant. You need to realign yourself. You need to go sit some time with yourself. You need to go fight it out in your own head. And then you guys need to work together. But I feel like a lot of times what I see often in our culture is you have two people that they let the stagnativity grow. They stop pursuing each other, and they don't want to put the effort and time and work in. And they're like, you know what, it's just easier to move on and build up, because in our society, we are a fast, quick, convenient kind of society, and we don't want to actually work towards things. And so what we're seeing is a lot of just people growing out of love and just like, oh, I'm going to go get a divorce. And that I don't think is healthy.
I really appreciate you for sharing that. And, the one thing that I want to point out about the topic of divorce is the fact that it can be looked at from multiple different facets, right? Clearly, you three being Christian women on the panel, you look at it from a biblical perspective. But as both you and Morgan alluded to, there is a worldly or non-biblical perspective of looking at divorce as well. And when you take both of those sides into consideration, I mean, you can see that the reasons and the rationales that people will use to, lack of a better term, justify the means for divorce is going to differ. I think that we can all say that the measure is going to be higher for somebody that is holding themselves to biblical standards as opposed to people who are not applying those biblical standards, right? And even from a biblical perspective, I would go as far as to say that biblically, abuse is not the only grounds for divorce. Neither is adultery, right? When you go and you look and you read in the Old Testament, a man could actually divorce his wife with, I guess, what some people would consider with not really the strongest reason or rationale behind it. And even though we do see in the text in the Bible that it says God hates divorce, it doesn't mean that it's not something that isn't permitted. It's definitely not something that is advocated for. It's not something that is used to escape a relationship, right? but it is something that was a reality in that time, and it is a reality in our time. But I think the main thing that we got to take into consideration too, especially when we're looking at it from a biblical versus a non-biblical perspective, is that biblically, we are talking about a culture that is thousands of years ago. Like the text of the Bible is not something that was just written like 10 years ago or 2 years ago. It was written thousands of years ago. And the way that relationships, family, and culture were in those times is completely different to the way it is now. And even though it is admirable for people to apply biblical principles to our society today, we got to understand that we're dealing with issues that are not or were not present at that time. So things that people that are not necessarily coming at it from a biblical perspective, they may say, well, this is a rational or justifiable reason to enter or to leave a marriage or to have a divorce, right? Some people may say, well, biblically, that's wrong. But is it really, when you consider the fact that we live in a completely different society? I think that there are some things biblically that it can be clear where it tells you like, yo, you shouldn't get a divorce under these circumstances, right? I think we all agree on that from a biblical perspective. But I think if we ignore the cultural aspect of it, then that's where you get shaming, right? I'm sure most of you are familiar with people being shamed for getting a divorce or even thinking about it, even saying the word in some circles. So I just want to point out the fact that this once again is how I kind of perceive things, and this is just my personal opinion. I just want to be clear, this isn't Bible, this is just me, this is just Jay's opinion. Is a lot of the ways that people navigate in relationship is going to be based on their personal experiences, their personal preference, right? And there are certain biblical principles for believers that you can apply in that relationship if God is at the center. Now, if you're in a relationship with somebody, or you're in a relationship and God or biblical principles are not something that is the foundation or the guiding point for that relationship, then that's a whole different story. But if it is, you can put yourself in a position where you make those decisions based on what the Bible says. But if you're not in that type of relationship, you got to understand that it's not going to be cut and dry as it would for somebody that's holding themselves to those principles. And that's really all that I wanted to point out. Is I think that the things that you guys said are on point. And I think that some of the perspectives that are being shared are also relevant. It's all about what context are we coming at it from? What is our own personal belief? And that's why I'm glad Black Belt posed the question as, what is your belief? Do you believe in divorce? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not putting it as a question of right and wrong, right? It's about a own personal choice and preference. And I think that that's really key. That's really key.
And if
That's
I want to add something onto that too,
yes.
because it also does go back to the beliefs. And if you actually like, if you break down the scripture and the context, like in the Bible, like those areas, what that time meant, like what it meant in that historical like time period, you would also notice that like the scriptures are written for God's people, like his believers, like Yeshua's followers. That's what it's written for. So people that are not of that religion, of like that relationship, like however you want to word it, you know, if they are not followers of the way, they didn't want to be a part of the Jews, they were the Gentile nation, whatever it was, marriage was totally different for them. You know, if you are a believer, and like since I am a believer, like I am following Yeshua, my beliefs are based off that. But like if you are of the world, then it goes back to the thing, well, is stealing wrong? Is lying wrong? Anything's permissible because you've become a god of yourself. And so in that aspect, then you have to look at divorce is totally permissible to them because they're not following the ways of Yeshua, you know.
Nah, this is the thing, and it's so funny that you bring this up because during my Sunday Bible study, we were just having this conversation about laws, right? And more specifically about commandments. And the question came up is, if somebody doesn't identify as a Christian, are they still sinning? And to not take you through that entire conversation, but to give you the cliff notes, like the point that I made is that it's just like laws here, like punishments. If somebody goes to prison, if somebody breaks a law and you give them a fine, it's based on the law, and it's based on whether or not the law applies to that person. So when you're looking at it from the perspective of somebody that doesn't identify with the laws that you hold yourself to, then you have to ask yourself, like, is that person a breaker of that law? Well, if it doesn't apply to them, then you probably can't really call them that. But this is the one thing that we can say across the board in the world is that
Mm-hmm.
we have moral principles or laws, right? And
Woven
those
into
apply
us.
regardless of the society that you're in. One of the biggest ones
Mm-hmm.
is murder. I don't know too many societies or cultures that think that murder is something that isn't an issue for that society or that culture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that there are other examples that can be pointed to, but not to get too deep in it, it's just a fact that what is the law or the guide that that person is holding themselves to? And I feel like
Exactly.
that is the measure that we need to judge people by. And I think one of the mistakes that often happens is we measure ourselves by a certain standard or a certain principle, and then we try to apply it to other people. Well, to a certain extent, that's really not fair because you can only hold
Mm-hmm.
them to their standards. So a better thing to do is to ask them, well, what is your perspective on that? And that's the reason, once again, giving credit to Black Belt is because he didn't come in and attack anybody's views. He wanted to
Mm-hmm.
first get an idea of what is your perspective on it? What is your personal belief? And I think that that is the way we are able to have respectful, honorable conversations, especially
Mm-hmm.
don't share our beliefs. It's not about trying to convince somebody or trying to pick one side over the other. But no, I just want to better understand you. I want to better understand your perspective. And that's one of the things that I'm definitely advocating for over here
Mm-hmm.
at Right to Real Love. So nah, man, yo, this has been good. Before we transition to our next question, I want to give Destiny the opportunity to let everyone know how they can show her some love and support. So Destiny, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. It's such an honor being on here. Like I was so excited when you invited me on here. I love talking about relationships. I actually have just revamped my own relationship podcast called The Adventure Between Us, which it is on YouTube, it is on podcast. You guys could hit that up. I also do have my own personal channel, Destiny Finn, that I'm always loving. And that's also my handle is on there for Instagram. If you guys have any questions, conversations, you want to know about certain topics, if you just want to talk at all, I am there. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to give advice. I'm willing to slap you with the truth. And if you want to slap me back with the truth, we can do that because I love the accountability partner thing. But no, it's been such an honor being on here and I'm excited and I'm super thankful. But yeah.
Yo, thank you, Destiny. I have a link to her YouTube channel. I just dropped it in the live chat, and it's also in the description on YouTube where you're watching this video. So definitely make sure you guys show her some love and support. So the next question that I want to get back to with regards to our topic at hand is getting your own personal perspectives. Have you ever failed to set boundaries that didn't allow you to avoid sexual temptation? So let's start with you, Morgan.
Okay, have I ever failed to set boundaries that the rest was that didn't allow me to keep?
Yeah.
Uh,
So have you ever failed to set boundaries to
mhm.
avoid sexual temptation?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially in the beginning of my walk, even like the beginning of my purity journey. I felt kind of like I didn't have a battle plan. I just knew like, okay, I'm doing this. All right, Jesus, let's go. And I did not realize the reality of being a young woman in college and then, hey, let's hang out. Let's do this. So I definitely failed in the beginning so much. I even say, but 2 years before I even started my purity journey, God was already calling me to it. And I would start it for a month or 6 months and then I'd fall off. I'd start it for another 6 months and then I'd fall off. And the Lord, every time I would come back to him, I'd be like, I'm so sorry, I'm trying. And he'd be just like, keep trying. And that's kind of how it birthed me a ministry today, years and years of it. And so it was really just from continuously trying. And so I definitely got it wrong a lot in the beginning. And I think it's the reality of it was my upbringing. I didn't grow up Christian. So there was a lot of things I was allowed to do. Early on, even through college, there were so many things I was just open to and unknown about because I was allowed to do those things. I'm trying to think in the 8th grade or 7th grade, my mom put me and my sister on birth control. Now, were we doing anything at that time? No, but she was the type of mom that was like, hey, y'all ain't about to bring no babies to my house, okay? And I mean, and she would, even when I was 16, 17 in school, she would go into our bathroom and she would say, Morgan, you haven't been taking your birth control pills. And so the reality of it is I grew up I didn't grow up Christian. So I grew up where sex, it wasn't saying go have sex, but it was like, if you're going to have sex, protect yourself. That's kind of what I grew up in. And so it made sense that then I was struggling with my purity in the beginning because I had already lived, I had a mindset of this is acceptable, but now there's a conviction. Then I have this mindset of it's my body, I do what I want, but then there's this conviction. You know what I mean? And so I definitely got it wrong a lot in the beginning. But thank God with time, with trial and error, obviously with listening to people like Dr. Miles Monroe and all these amazing other people kind of helping you on your journey, it allowed me to get to where I am today.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Mhm.
Tatiana, what about you? Have you ever failed to set boundaries?
Yes. Short answer, yes. Sometimes in some relationships that I had in the past, like it was because I was led by my emotions. Sometimes you get this idea. I'll speak for the ladies who may have fell in that trap too, like, oh, I'm gonna marry him one day, so it's fine, or it's like you get caught up in the moment, or you don't put those boundaries there because things felt good and things got more good or gooder. So you're just like, let's see how far this goes. Because we tend to do that as human beings, saved or not saved. You're going to test the limits of your authority. You're going to test the limits of God's standard for purity and righteousness in regards to keeping your body or maintaining your body. I mean, he will help you if you let him. But, there's a part that we have to play in that too. So I definitely on my end, in doing stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like, man, that conviction, it kicks in. Or I just look back like, man, I know I shouldn't have did that. But God's grace, though. God's grace. Let's not take advantage of it. Like they said earlier, like not grieve the Holy Spirit, but I'm thankful for his grace that I don't have to live in that and take those lessons and apply to what I can do now.
Nah, that's good. That's good. And what about you, Destiny? Have you ever failed to set boundaries to avoid sexual temptation?
See, I kind of come from a different, like, I guess, background of, like, I grew up in a very abusive home,
Mm.
And so, like, I was molested at a very young age. So I, in a sense, had the other flip side of men are evil. I never want to see any of them. I never want to touch any of them. That's disgusting. Leave me alone. And because you usually have two of the flip sides. And so that was definitely my side. So growing up, I definitely got very hard-hearted and prideful. And then as I came to know Christ, like in my earlier high school years, and I did start growing that deeper walk in relationship with him, that's where he began my softening journey of, listen, you need to trust me with relationships and trust that I have your best interest at hand. And you can have healthy boundaries, but they need to be just that, healthy. They can't be out of pain, fear, or hurt from past things that have happened to me. I need to heal from them and work through them.
Nah, that's good. That's good. I really appreciate you for sharing that. Yo, so just want to quickly give some shout outs to those who have been leaving some amazing comments. So I'm gonna just quickly go through. So Krista has been showing some love in the chat. Shout out to you, Krista. So has Tiffany. Appreciate your comments coming through. Sim, we appreciate your comments as well. Ebony, want to give a huge shout out to you. We appreciate you as well. Definitely want to give a shout out again to my man Dojo. There's one right there. Shout out to my man Black Belt. And let's see, is there anybody else? JD, once again, appreciate you as well, brother, for joining us on the show. JD Clay, we appreciate you for joining us as well. And none other than Katiwe, we appreciate you for being with us tonight as well. So I just want to give a shout out to everybody that's still rocking with us in the chat. Show them some love and support. Definitely keep y'all great comments coming along. You guys can feel free to answer the questions that are being posed, and we will definitely shout you guys out. And if you have questions of your own, feel free to drop those in the chat as well. But I'm coming back over to you, Destiny, because there's a really good question that I want to ask you, which is, what are some emotional and mental boundaries that need to be put in place in order to avoid sexual temptation? Most people know the physical ones, but what about the mental? What about the emotional?
Psychological. That's what I love.
Right.
Is psychology. No, to go with that is, like, I always take things back from a biblical perspective, because as I want to honor God in all that I do and all that I live. And so with that, you get a very clear picture, especially with a women, because like I said at the beginning, like, women are a lot more emotional where guys are more physical. I'm not saying guys aren't emotional. I'm not saying girls are physical, because you do have both. But what you will see in the hard wearing of most women, they are a lot more emotional. And so healthy boundaries to have with that, especially, I know a lot of girls that I've mentored, even like me at times, like when I start to feel safe of like, oh, this is actually somebody who cares for me and protects me and wants to point me back to Christ. It's like, okay, I want to share about things in my past, this, that, or the other, like my trials and tribulations. But the truth is, you don't need to tell your whole testimony date number 2. Like, there are some things that should be saved until you are close in that season of marriage, because not everybody gets the inside access to your life, inside access to your mind, because it goes back to, just like you have different levels of relationships with other people, you have those work friendships. I only talk about work with them. I have those film friendships that, like, we purely talk about like our filmmaking and whatnot. I have those godly friends that we talk about the deeper topics. You're not just going to want to go tell somebody everything that you've done. And then next thing you know, it doesn't work out, or you overwhelm them, because if it's a godly man, they're coming to be like, whoa, she's like flagging me with way too much stuff right now. Like we ain't there yet in that friendship, in that season. You need to have those emotional boundaries, like the Bible talks about being like a well-built wall of fortress, like protecting yourself, because love protects. And that also means emotionally, especially since if you are even an empath, like if we're going to take that psychology and that side of it, an empath, like I am a very big empath of like, I can sense people's emotions. And there are people out there that will abuse that. They'll be like, oh, they just want to love, they just want attention, they want like the best for you, because an empath usually has the point of view in the world of everything's great. Like people, they're always looking out for their best interests, like the good side, where there are people that have hidden motives. And it goes back to like, especially like if you take Christian women, a lot of times, like what happens is Christian girls will be like, oh, he says he's a Christian, he goes to church, he reads his Bible, I got to stop looking for those flags. When in reality, no, you got to keep looking for that fruit. You got to keep looking for the
That's
deeper
facts.
roots there. And you have to guard your heart, and you have to, and what that means is back in the Bible, in like the Jewish culture, guarding your heart was at the center of everything you did. So to guard your heart mean to guard your mind, your thoughts, your emotions, like to guard your life in a sense, to not let it be led astray. And so emotional boundaries are really important, of how much are you sharing, how much are you allowing. Don't just, oh, he says I'm adorable, this, that, or the other, and just instantly gush all over it, because that goes back to, then you have to look at like self-worth of, no, I am worthy, like I am chosen, I am priceless, I am loved by God. It's not like just stub it off a compliment. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you do need to be careful with those boundaries, especially like with words, because flattery is very easy to get addicted to. And that's where you need to be careful on the line of, okay, are they flattering me, or are they actually encouraging me right now?
That's real.
But,
Oh man, you just dropped so many gems, Destiny. Thank you so much for that. Let me quickly, before I come over to Morgan, share some of these comments. So Katiwe says, I agree. As an empath, it can be difficult. Some people won't hesitate to I guess exploit. That's what that should be. Yeah, exploit your vulnerability. Yeah, that's real. That's real. Krista says, think the pace that you can go at with sharing your personal information should emulate the pace of meeting a new girlfriend. Oh yeah, she's speaking like a new friend. So like I'm assuming that you're not gonna just start giving her all your secrets. Like you gotta fill her out, make sure that she's a part of the
exactly.
club. So Katiwe also says, yes, guarding your heart. And Tiffany says, ladies, thank you for the rock of truth tonight. Yeah, y'all dropping so many gems. And also, Black Belt said, thank you to all the ladies on the panel for sharing your stories and handing out pieces of wisdom to us. So, ladies definitely are appreciated tonight. So, coming over to you, Morgan, going back to that same question, what do you feel are some emotional or mental boundaries that women need to set to avoid sexual temptation?
The first thing I will say, like with the mental ones, is just don't be thinking and like getting in your head and seeing him as your husband and like 20 kids now and all that. Because I feel like that's what gets a lot of us caught up in a lot of trouble, is we start to already, we literally can text for a day and then we start visualizing him as our husband and how our life is going to look. And so that's a mental boundary. You have to be like, hold on, no, I don't know this man yet. He hasn't revealed himself to be that. So let me cut that off. This is just a friend, right? And when it comes to the emotional part, I think someone said it in the comments where they said like you have to pace it. And I think I have learned, I got a life coach, and she kind of was like, sis, you got to pace these things. Like you be in a rush, you ready, like it's like, hey, how you doing? You ready for the first date? Like it's good, but you need to pace this. And so I had to learn that it's okay not to be fully in control, to let go of it and let it flow in the spirit. Like literally go with the spirit, girl. Because the reality is when you start to mentally start picturing things, now you're emotionally connected. And then you're wondering, why isn't he as connected? But the reality is, sis, you've been daydreaming all day. The little conversation that y'all have for 5 minutes or for an hour, you've turned it into a year-long situation now. And so I think that, so emotionally, mentally, there has to be some personal boundaries. And you don't have to so much try to work with him, but you have to make sure that I'm at flow. And you have to know too, the current season you're at in your life. I think the reality is sometimes we get connected to people and we don't realize what has the Lord called me to do in this season. See, and so that's what for me personally has helped me navigate my dating life, because I know in this season, this is what the Lord has called me to do. Now, I love for this thing to flow and to flourish, but this I must do, right? This is my mandate right now. And when you have a mandate, then someone comes in, you see how they can benefit that. how they can add to that. And if let's say your mandate is big, when you're a busy person, let's say that, the right person for you will work with you. They'll say, you know what, a win for the kingdom is a win to me. So you know what, go ahead, study your word tonight. Go ahead, work on your ministry tonight. Go ahead, work on your purpose tonight. And so that's kind of how I look at it. When you have these boundaries and you go with the flow of the spirit, that person is going to help you evolve, and they're going to love every part of you. And you're just going to be able to have such a balance and a flow with your dating.
Nah, that's good. That's good. And Tatiana, I'm curious, because something that both Destiny and Morgan brought up is the the way women think is a little bit different than men. You guys have the tendency to, create stories, fantasize, the imagination can run kind of wild.
Oh,
How does a
yes.
woman tame that, when it comes to setting these type of boundaries mentally?
It's definitely, I have a testimony about that I shared before, probably on this show, about, being on a really good date with the man of God, and he was praying and everything. In my mind, I thought everything was perfect. And it's super easy to get caught up in the moment because it's a nice date, whatever, whatever. But like the Holy Spirit reminded me when I was on that date, like, this is the bare minimum. You need to calm down. Like, in a nutshell, right? So sometimes we have to, if you don't hear that from the Holy Spirit, tell yourself that. Have that one girlfriend to check in on you during the date. Like, hey girl, remember, XYZ, 1, 2, 3, whatever your statement is, whatever you need to get reminded of so that you are sober minded on this date. Do that thing so that you don't get caught up in the emotions of it all. Because, like JD presented to us earlier, someone could give you a lot of who they are, their representation in the beginning, but after a while, after time, if you give it some time or ask the right questions, you will find out that they were putting on a front. So that could definitely keep you sober minded. And I think sometimes we just fall into the traps because of good old fashioned peer pressure, right? So remember those things that the world is saying. You're going to hear that in your dating season while you're talking to someone, while you're in a relationship with someone. Like, oh, everybody else is doing it. Oh, there's this and that. You will hear those things. So you have to just like cast those thoughts down and take authority over what you're thinking about. And also just remember what you're putting into your ear gates as well. As much as we want to guard our hearts, we also have to remember that stuff goes into the heart from other areas too, right? So what we're watching, what we're listening to, what we're reading. I was thinking about it on my way when I was getting ready for the show. I was like, yo, R&B music, for example, like R&B music, all genres of music can cover these topics, but R&B music specifically nowadays talks a lot about sex. That's why it's rhythm and blues. There's rhythm and there's blues. There's sadness, there's heartbreak, there's sex, there's dating, there's all those things. If you're thinking about that stuff, if you're listening to music like that before you go on a date, you might think about that stuff and you might act on it too. If you're listening to worship music, I hope you're not thinking about sex. I really hope not. If you are, you might need deliverance. But you know what I'm saying? But if you ask God to join you on the date, you might have a better outcome on your date versus you listening to something that may bring up some sexual thoughts or desires that you didn't want to bring onto the date with you. So there's some practical boundaries I would set there myself.
Nah, that's good. Yeah, and y'all know I'm definitely a proponent of guarding your gates. I think that that's vitally important for both men and women, right? Because if you don't, things can definitely slip right on under those cracks, and you have to deal with the aftermath and the consequences of them. So we have some really good chat comments. So let me go ahead and point them out really quickly. So we did have two questions. So one came in from MSM and then one came in from Dojo. I think we'll probably get through Dojo's the quickest. So I'm gonna do that one first. Then I'm gonna come back and give you guys MSM's question. So both of y'all just hold on. I'm gonna get to both of them. But in the meantime, here are a few comments that came in. So JD said, Morgan, so true. Women develop a lifetime in their head when on the first date, then possibly hurt when the relationship doesn't work out. That's real. JD was saying so true when I was talking about the imagination of women. And then Tiffany says, LOL, complete lifetime in one moment of thought. Yeah, that's real talk. Krista says, I remember you saying this on Jay's podcast. Tatiana definitely blessed her. And she also says, I think we as women really just got to calm down. Yo, no, nobody can say it better than a woman. So Katiwe says, yes, temptation increases when certain musical riffs and runs. Yeah, that's real. They do. They do.
Mhm.
And she also says she agrees with Krista. Krista says, I had a little crisis after turning 29 and I'm finally coming out of that. Yeah, yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
And yes, MSM, I definitely got you. We're going to come to your question for sure. Just give me a second. Oh, sorry. JD also said, just calm down, be sober minded. Excellent advice. Yes, indeed. So, ladies, let's go to my man Black Belt's question and then we'll go to MSM. So, coming over to you, Destiny. He wanted to know, other than a man being Christian, what are the tangibles that all of you women require in a man? So let's start with you, Destiny.
Well, I guess for me, like, because I wrote out those lists. Funny story, part of my testimony is when God really started humbling me of like, you need to trust me with relationships. I definitely was still prideful. And I was like, well, fine, I'm going to make this whole entire perfect list of a man and nobody's going to ever top it. So I'm never going to have a man. I'm going to have it my way. Well, it's been topped. Anyways, but going
Wow.
on to that, but going on to that, it really is what I was really looking forward in a guy is where is his heart first with the Lord? Like, is he more focused on God or is he more focused on pleasing others or capturing the attention of women? Like, that was really where my thing was. And then it was watching the fruit, you know, like, what does he do with his time? Like, what is he watching? What is he listening to? Because as Tatiana was saying, like, music for sure, like Satan was head of music, and when he got casted down, like that is why music is so powerful in our culture, you know, and that's why it does influence. And when you look at all the like energy waves and whatnot, but then you also have to look at like what are you like feeding yourself, you know, like whatever you feed into is going to come out, whether it's subconscious or conscious. And so with that, it's really what was he doing with his time, but then how does he treat people around him? How does he treat the janitor at work? How does he treat that server? You know, like, is he protecting others? Like, is he protecting people just with respect? Is he like, how is he talking to them? You know, is he selfless or is he selfish? Like, how is he caring for his family? How is he caring for other people? How is he mentoring other men around him? You know, like, what are those biblical rooted deep fruits and how are they growing in his life? Because that's what I really looked at. And then I guess for me, I wanted to know the dreams because all too often people don't really have direction or vision with their life. And to me, that's a complete turnoff. If I ask you, what do you want to be in 5 years? And you're like, I don't know, maybe married, I guess, or oh, I'll probably get a job. Like that to me is like, no, I don't want that in my circle of friends. I want people that are going to push me towards my goals and I want to push people towards their goals. And so I wanted to see real, true, genuine direction of this is my vision. If God changes that, then I'm willing to go with it. But this is where I feel him leading me right now. And that's what I want to pour into. And then I wanted to see the action behind it because it's so easy to sweet talk something. Like I talk a lot. I could probably make a total piece of trash sound like it's worth $1 million if I wanted. And so it goes back to what is the action behind the words? And I watch a lot, you know, I people watch a lot and I suggest you doing that, you know, just watch them, you know, especially if you have interest in them, watch them and tell your accountability partners to watch them because when you're in a relationship or even if you just have slight interest in somebody, you're like, oh, I have a crush on him. I think he's cute. I want to get to know him more. You're already flipping off certain sensors that your friends are like, whoa, 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 there's some red flags here, but you're like, oh, you're just jealous of that. No, they're seeing things because they're not emotionally attached to the relationship. And so you need to have that good circle of people that are watching how you interact, how you change around them, how they act around you versus other people. And you need to see, hey, what are you seeing in them? Like, do you see these fruits? Are you seeing these things? And you need to just have that clear, sober mind. Like the Bible says, be alert, stay sober minded. It's because so often we want to just flip that off and go into la la land, but God's like, no, 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 no. You need to be sober minded. But that's where I'm going to end it, I think, right now.
Nah, that's good. That's good. Coming over to you, Morgan. What would you say?
Okay. Well, that's so good. And I always went from Psalms 112. I don't know, I read it years ago, and it's all about a man and how he's gracious, how he's righteous, how he trusts in the Lord. And so for me, I remember I was like, God, I want a Psalms 112 man. Like he trusts in the Lord, he honors the Lord. So it's definitely a Christian man. Great. That's the basics. So that's step one, you know. But let's see, like she said, where's your fruit, first off? And also for me, one thing I really look into is his moral and his character. Like, how is his character looking? Like, is he doing anything shady that he just talks about and it seems shady? But he's like, oh no, but I did this with my friend. Like, what is his character revealing? Because one thing I've said and I've learned the hard way is that when you know God has called you to do something, you don't want anyone to come in and embarrass what God is building. And I have been in situations where I've had to let a man go because you're embarrassing what God is building through me. You're going to embarrass it. And that's a hard conversation to have because you want this person to embrace all that they are versus not be everything that they're being at the time. So I will say I've always really tried my best to make sure that when I looked at these men, I didn't look at them through the glass of, oh, he's just fine. Oh, he just looks bomb. Like, oh, wow. But really looking at him as in like, how does he talk how is he treating his dog right now when we're on FaceTime? Like, is he talking crazy to that dog? Then the reality is he probably will talk crazy to my kids, right? Does he get angry really easy? Like paying attention to these parts of him, I'm like, oh, hold on, what did you do today? Because I've been up since about 9 and you just got up at 12. Okay. We don't got no vision. We ain't grinding. We ain't hustling, right? So for me, I know what kind of husband I probably and would need. I need a hustler. I need someone that works just as much as I do, right? That has a vision for his life. And so when I start seeing those little cracks, I guess you can say, it's a turnoff to me. Not saying I need him to provide or pay my bills. I got that. But I need to make sure that he can not only lead my family, but that he can lead us not only closer to Jesus Christ, but that he can be able to lead his own life. And I think the bare minimum is if he's a Christian, great. Thank you for loving the Lord. But can you pay your own bills? Can you make if something ever happened to me, could you pay my bills as your wife? Could you pay all of ours? Are you the type that's going to get up and figure out how to feed our children? Or are you the type that's going to chill out and let me figure out how we're feeding the children, right? So I need somebody. So when I'm looking at a man, I'm paying attention to a lot of different aspects because the reality is when you know what you're carrying, you don't cast your pearls before swine. You don't. And so the reality is I want to make sure that he is a man of a great caliber, that he can not only lead me, but he can expand what God is building through me.
Nah, that's real. That's real. So I appreciate you for sharing that. So my man Black Belt, he did come through. He wanted to clarify that one of the key words that he had asked was tangibles. And so I asked him in the chat, I was like, can you give the lady some examples of what you mean by tangible? So this is what he said, lady. This is what he's looking for. He says tangible such as height, race, body type, career type, income, education level. If it cannot essentially be tracked by a number or status, then it's not tangible. So with that in mind, he's curious to know what are some of the tangible things that you ladies look for. So I'll come back over. I'm gonna let Destiny and Morgan think on it for a minute, and I'm gonna go to Tatiana. So with that in mind, Tatiana, what would be the tangibles that you would be looking for outside of him being a Christian?
Okay, yeah, that was an interesting question. Guys like to ask those questions specifically. I always found that. Not to say it's a bad question. I just thought that was interesting. I dated different guys who were different heights. I dated different races at one point, different body types, different career types, different education levels, different incomes. I dated a variety. As far as what I'm looking for in my spouse, I'm kind of open with the numbers. If you want to be specific, I'm kind of open with all of these because education doesn't dictate that you'll be successful. I mean, in this world, maybe, but there's people who got degrees who are not operating in their degrees, who are making way more money or doing much more purposeful things outside of what they got degrees in. There's a little caveat for everything. I'm not about to do all that. But I'm basically open, and I have a special person in my life who fits what I'm looking for. So I'm happy with it.
All right. I won't be surprised if he may think you curved a little bit. I feel like you curved just a tad bit, like not many lock-in answers.
I mean,
but
because it's such a personal question, so I'm like, I don't know. Yeah.
I think we all know. Like everybody got tangibles, and we can run them off, and that's fair. I'm not gonna press. I'm gonna come back over to you, Destiny. What are some of the tangibles that you would list off?
Okay. So I'm gonna kind of go back to like testimony time, like making that list when I was prideful and whatnot with my Lord Jesus. So I honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't, like, I'm being genuine. It didn't really matter. It goes first back to character, biblical character, because I am a type of person, I could care less what you look like. I could care less what you're wearing, but how are you treating me and how are you treating those around you? Like, what is that self-belief? Because that's what truly matters. But on my list, I did have he had to be at least taller than me because like I'm 5'9", like I am tall and I like to wear heels. So at that rate, I'm like 6 foot even. And so I did want somebody taller than me, but that's just personal preference, you know, because I have best friends that they like a guy who's shorter than them. And that's great. I also wanted a guy who could pull off facial hair just because that's what I'm attracted to. I also hate basketball shorts. If a man wears basketball shorts, it's instantly a turn off for me. It's just my personal preference with clothing is I want somebody who like cares and I guess dresses nice in the sense of they take respect for themselves. It's like when I see basketball shorts, I instantly think of just like pajamas in Walmart, which I'm not shaming you if you do that. It's just it's not something I'm attracted to, you know? And then honestly, income, I could care less about that. What I care about is are you making your ends meet? Are you budgeting properly? Because you could have somebody making $1 million a week and somebody making $100 a week, but whoever knows how to budget better is going to come out on top. You know, budgeting is a huge key of being with good character with money and learning the passive income and building that up and investing and being a wise steward of what God has given you. That's more important to me than the income that you make. And then it goes back to also with the income, if you're doing something that you absolutely hate, like let's say you're CEO of a company, but you hate it and it's killing your soul, I'm going to take more pride in somebody who's pursuing a lower paying degree that God's called them to than the person that's just chasing the money or the status quo, because they're actually doing what's bringing them to life and what God's called them to do. So that's definitely more important to me is, are you doing what God has created you to create, or are you just chasing the money and status quo?
Nah, that's real. That's real. So here's the thing, right? And I got to give a huge shout out to Black Belt. You know, he was our MVP last week, and I think he's the MVP again this week for sure, because he's doing something that's really important for this channel, right? Which is bringing a male perspective, right? I think sometimes when women are having conversations, it's easy for it to become like an echo chamber. And sometimes you need that male opinion and perspective to be interjected in the conversation so you can understand how men perceive it. And this is a perfect example because I think women do tend to put more weight on intangibles than they do tangibles. But from a man's perspective, when you look at especially the modern day woman, a lot of the reason why men are being rejected and not given the fair shake is because of the tangibles. So I can totally understand why my man Black Belt is curious to know what are the tangibles that each of you ladies are interested in. So let me just for a second share some of the comments that he had right quick so that we can see what he had to say. So here's the first one. So he says, guys, guys ask the question honestly about tangibles because people cannot wiggle or lie their way out of these types of questions. Not saying you all are lying, not at all. But my earlier comments, here it goes, explains why tangibles matter. In real life, it doesn't not matter how much a man claims to love you if he has no ability to make more than the poverty income. He goes on to say, I am honestly trying to help because I think women do not understand when you don't have actual concrete standards, then you allow anyone to walk in with a chance. And I think he makes a really great point because if we don't have some sort of measure for why we're allowing people in, you can open the door to anybody, right? But I will give you guys this caveat, and I think that it's important, especially if it's the main thing that you're keeping your eye out, which is something that all three of you said, which is character, right? I think what happens is if a person puts the tangibles over the character, that's a recipe for disaster right there as well, right? Because the person can look like and check all of those boxes of the things that you want, but if they lack character, well, how far are they going to lead you? How well are they going to be able to protect you? Like, are they really going to be the partner that can come alongside you? So I'm in complete agreement with you guys. I think character is highly important, but I also believe that we have to acknowledge the fact that the tangibles, they play a role as well. And if we don't talk about those tangibles, especially how easily it is for some people to slip into just being focused on nothing but the tangibles and ignore the intangibles, then we have an issue. But the one thing that I can say to the credit of all three of you ladies, Destiny, Morgan, and Tatiana, is that you were focused in on the intangible, which is
Yeah.
the character of a man. And I think that's important because if the man has the character and you are, as many of you said, able to rock with him, even if he may not meet some of the tangible standards, then by all means, you know, like who's to say that that relationship wouldn't work for you? Now, for other women, it may be a totally different case, but I once again will reiterate the point I made earlier. I think that relationships really are focused on the two people that are involved in them. And as long as those people can find a way to make it work for them, then I mean, to the outside world, it really doesn't matter. You know, they may have their thoughts or their opinions, but is it working for the two people in that relationship? So that's just all I wanted to share right there. But we did have a few chat comments. So let me really quickly go give some shout outs. So Ebony says standards are different than preferences, though. Yes, they are. They definitely are.
I agree.
Can see why it was laughing at the basketball shorts.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love basketball shorts.
See, like, and that's the beauty
So,
of the
but I will
differences, right?
say, when he asked his question, it did make you think of the like preference, like not really your preferences, not the tangibles, but I'll say like as women, we know what we like, you know. So if
It
it's like you
seems
want to get
very,
real
yeah.
tangible, you know,
Yeah.
like we know what we like, we know what. Like I remember being at the skating ring one time with a friend, and she was like, "Oh, did you notice that guy like was interested in you, but he wasn't my type." So
Right.
I never even know. I'm like, when? She's trying to point him out, and I'm like,
Yeah.
but he wasn't the guy that I'm interested
Yeah.
in, you know? So, and we all have our type. We already know what we like. Now we're going to get like down to the basics, and it's not going to be everyone. Like, she don't like dudes that wear basketball shorts. I love dudes that wear basketball shorts, you know? It's going to be really different. You know, some like me, I'm a specific race I'm more drawn to, right? Things like that. So for each of us, it's going to be really different. But I just think like as long as your character, like a man, he can have all that, but if his character's off, we don't want it. You know, so if his income is straight, but his character is really off, he talks to us crazy or something, we don't want it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think the reality is you want a man that embodies not only his character, but some parts of your list, you know, you want someone that you actually notice, recognize, you're attracted to, someone that you actually have a desire around. Like I feel like women already deep down, like we know our preferences. Like a boy can walk up to us and be like, "You can really talk to me," and it's like, "That's not my type," you know, like you just know, you just know it. And you know, it's like, and it's not even like not my type, but it's like I don't envision myself marrying a man as in this, you know, just as men do the same thing with women. And so I think it goes both ways.
Nah, I appreciate you for sharing that. And this is just my opinion. Definitely let me know if I'm wrong, ladies. I feel like sometimes women, especially when you're on private, like public platforms like this, there's this need to kind of be cautious about people thinking that you only care about the tangibles. So I think there is a little bit more emphasis placed on the character and the intangibles. So people don't think that all you care about is how tall a man is, what he looks like, how he dressed, and all of that type of stuff. Is that a fair assessment? Is that one of the reasons why? Oh, so you saying no? Okay, it's not.
Very passionate. No, sorry, Jay.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Sorry, not sorry. I'm like, no, what? I don't know. Maybe it's just us ladies in this little panel here, or maybe it's the ladies in the comments. But I don't know. I appreciate Dojo's question, but when he asked it, it's like, what are women looking for in a man? That's an objective question, but it's subjective to the woman. We all are different. There's some women who don't even want men. There's some women who want specific kind of men. Some women who are more open. So I don't think you should put anyone in a box in terms of what are your tangibles. Because I could be attracted to some man and I could be not as attractive to another man. You know what I'm saying? So to me, I feel like I appreciate the question, but it's like, is that specific enough to the person? I guess maybe if you want to get to know what we're looking for in a man, but to me, the question was posed to what are women looking for in a man that's tangible? And I'm like, you can't really put a height number
I will
to
push
that.
back on that.
Help me out with that.
He was very specific about the women on the panel. So like he didn't ask a general question. His question was very specific for all of
he
the
wanted to
ladies
know
on
what
the
we
panel.
like.
That's exactly what he asked.
Okay.
That's exactly what he asked.
Okay,
So,
but
my apologies.
real quick.
Yes,
You know what
I
mean?
gotta be fair. Like
Yeah.
I'm very, very mindful of the way questions are worded. So yeah, he was very specific. So he didn't ask a general question. So
that's really good then. Then that's
Thank you for
easy.
clarifying. Yeah, that's definitely easier to say then. And so to what we were saying, because of the kind of women that we are going to have those intangible, that character behind it, because we may have experienced that before where we dated based off of surface level stuff that we were attracted to, and then it was like, yeah, that's not enough. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, ideally, like I'm hypergamous. If we want to go tangible, like I prefer my husband to make more money than I do. I work in a nonprofit. I don't make that much money at all. So that's something I would be looking for. I can't pinpoint a certain number on it because money can change. But ideally, I would like my partner, my husband, to make more than me. If we want to put it on the income basis, someone taller than me, you know? I don't have a specific number for that, but to what Destiny was saying, like taller than me when I wear heels, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. But some of those other things are negotiable. I think I learned to be more open with that. When I was younger, maybe it was a certain look here and there, but I've been more open when it comes to guys. Now that I'm well into my 30s and more mature, I just look at it like, it could be whatever. You don't know. Sometimes you like what you like when you see that person in that situation. So that's just me though. But I
But
appreciate
I
that
like that
question
though.
for
I
for
like how you're
challenging us.
so open. I like that because I don't think I am. I know, like I like African American men.
All right.
I'm pretty sure I'm like 5'5", 5'3", 5'4". And so I mean, as long as he's like 5'9", 5'8", I'm happy. I will say he doesn't have to make more money than me. Because the reality is, I'm pretty much I'm not the average everyday woman, and so it will really empty my dating pool, honestly. So he doesn't have to make more money than me, but he has to just make his own, you know. And I feel like for me, it's just like as long as the little tangibles, like you don't got to make more money, you got to be taller than me. Like we want to get real tangible, but like she said, it's specific to every woman, you know. And so I mean, if he wanted to know ours individually, like he said, then yeah, I mean, we can give you the list, brother. Okay, you want the whole list, we can give it to you.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
because we
That's
know
good.
it.
I
And that can
appreciate you,
change
ladies.
in 5 years too. So I'm just putting that out there as well. I mean, that's a nice question. We were talking about
That
sexual temptation in this episode, but yeah.
was that. So let me go ahead and give some more chat shout outs. So Krista said Dojo wants that real. He definitely did.
Yes.
Queen of Kings, shout out to you for joining the chat. Ebony's giving some fire to Destiny because she was dropping it. Yes, indeed. So Krista says she wants to be
Oh,
the MVP.
Krista.
Yo, one of these days, yo, Krista, we bringing you back on soon. So once again, you'll get that shot right on the show as well. So Queen of Kings says, I didn't really hear any real tangibles. Yeah, we just talked about that. I think that came in a little bit sooner.
I want to hear
So
y'all
let's
tangible shoot.
okay. So here he says, I think women focus on the intangibles because they are assuming by definition of him being a man that the tangibles are going to be satisfied. Yo, that's a topic for another day for sure. For sure. We're gonna definitely get into that at some point. So
It's a good
Ebony
topic.
says, do we measure people by preferences or standards, morals? I think both come into
Both.
play. Really, that's a short answer. So Ebony says, exactly, Jay, fire. Yes, y'all are dropping fire. She says, facts. Well said, Dojo. All right, let's see. We got another one here. So he says, you might block.
Oh
He
my
says, you might
gosh.
block me after this, but I can argue that. Uh-oh.
Adolf Hitler.
Oh, okay. Had great character. If I look at it, okay, yeah, that's getting a little bit more deeper into the topic than we have preferred to get into it. So I'm gonna pass that one really quickly. So Ebony says, "Well said, Jay. Fire, yes indeed. Okay, more claps." Krista says, "If I'm honest, I want someone black, brown skin, over 5'10" and makes more money than me. Okay, so people are
Thank you,
dropping
Krista, for
their
sharing.
tangibles. She says, but honestly, that's all negotiable aside from being black.
That's
Okay,
all we're trying to
everybody
say.
has their tangibles. Ebony says he don't have to be tall, I'm sure anyway. Okay, so like thank you. So now he says, thank you, ladies. Those are actual tangible. So it did
Right.
come, you got the thankful. So let's see. We did have okay. All right. So before we jump, I think there are some other questions. I may come back to those, but I want to respect MSM. But before we do that, I want to hand the mic over to my girl Morgan. I'm gonna let you finish. I'm gonna let you finish. Like keep getting your grub on for a second, and then I'm gonna swing it back over to you. Just give me the thumbs up when you're ready, and then okay, perfect. So Morgan, definitely let the people know how they can get in contact with you, show you some love and support.
Okay, well, you can follow me on Instagram at Morgan Tracy J. I am a full-time YouTuber as well. You can check out my YouTube channel, Morgan Tracy J. I talk on faith, fashion, and fearlessness. And I have a women's empowerment ministry based here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so you can check out my blog, hisdaughterscloset.com, where we share weekly devotionals, free resources, and we have a monthly membership to help you transform your walk in God.
Amazing. I appreciate that. Morgan's link is already in the description on YouTube, and I just dropped it in the chat for you guys to check it out as well. And before we transition, because I don't want to forget this, Tatiana, you also had something that you wanted to share with us tonight. So would love for you to take the opportunity to share about that foundation right now.
Yeah, so everybody, I'm happy to share this annual fundraiser that this girls mentoring group in Chicago is hosting. The name of the group is called Esteem. And every year they have a fundraiser to gain resources so that they can give and pour into Chicago area girls. I think the ages are like elementary through high school age. So they want to pour into these girls and make sure that they have a safe space to be propelled into womanhood. So they're being taught practical skills as well as spiritual skills, becoming more aware of who they are, becoming young ladies, so that they don't get lost in society that is trying to tell them to go other routes in life. So Jay is going to post the link. It's in there already. So if you guys feel free to donate anything you feel led to donate to the cause, so that the girls have their T-shirts, have other resources, so they can go on trips, so they can have tools and stuff that they need to enjoy the program, so it won't be a burden on their parents and things like that. We appreciate it. For any donation would be great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. The link, once again, is in the description on YouTube, and it's also in the chat. So before we wrap up for tonight, it's been great. Like the chat, shout out to y'all. Y'all been on fire tonight. So many great questions. I think I'm gonna have to go back through it and figure out some topics for some upcoming videos. I think I can definitely find a few in there. But I want to be mindful and honorable of Destiny, Morgan, and Tatiana's time tonight. So we're gonna close out with this last question from MSM. So I'm coming over to you with this one, Destiny. This is what it says. While on vacation, it's okay for a couple to stay at the same hotel room and get separate beds. My ex-boyfriend thought it was okay that we shared a hotel room and get separate beds, but I refused. So, ladies, this is a fun little way to end it out. What would you do if you were in this situation? What's your take on it, Destiny?
So for me, since I always go back from a biblical perspective, I definitely say no. It's the same concept of if you bought a house together before you're married, and even if you're just sleeping in separate bedrooms, it still doesn't look like that from the outside perspective. From the outside perspective, it looks like you're living together, and automatically the imagination runs to, oh, they're probably sleeping together. And so with the hotel thing, it's still in a sense, oh, what are they doing there? It doesn't matter if you have separate beds. It still goes back to, oh, well, they're probably sleeping together, you know? So how does it look and whatnot? And I know you can't always just live your life off other people's opinions and like what they're looking at, but you do also have to come back like as a way of not letting other people stumble and fall. And if they are watching you because you have set yourself apart, they're going to be watching on how you live. And if you are setting yourself apart of, okay, they're not getting a hotel room together. Why? You know, and a godly man, like at least I know the godly men I hang around, they are more than willing to protect a woman's purity. And they're like, you know what? I'm going to protect her image as well. And I'm going to make sure that she has her separate space. And some will even go as far to make sure that there's always somebody else in that circle if they are taking a car trip cross country or this and that for like if there is business. So I'd personally say no.
Nah, that's real. I appreciate that. So coming over to you, Morgan, what's your take on staying in the same hotel room with separate beds while on the
Sis,
vacay?
it's a setup. Don't let him get you. It's a setup. He trying to get you in the room, trying to get you comfortable, trying to get you just chill. Because trust me, if you bend a boundary, he's gonna press again. Period. Okay. So the reality of it is, don't bend on your boundaries because he's gonna press that. And the next time he's gonna be like, "Well, we can get one room with the same bed, but I'm gonna lay at the opposite end because you already let him in the room the first time. So now it's okay." Sis, he's setting you up, okay? And the reality, she said it literally. Destiny said it so beautifully. A man that honors God is going to honor your purity. He's not going to try to take that from you. He's going to try to protect that. So if you ever get a little weak, he's going to be like, hold on, sis, remember, no. He's going to try to protect you. And so if he's coming at you like that, sis, he's trying to set you up. Come on, sis, be smart. It was a setup. It was a setup.
All right. And Tatiana, what's your take on this question about sharing a room, separate beds at the hotel on the vacay?
I don't think it works, especially if you know yourself and you're like, yeah, no, I've been there, done that. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again because I know I don't want to fall into that kind of temptation. And like, you're literally, it's like what the Bible talks about. Would you put flaming hot coals on your lap and act like it's not burning? Something like that. I wouldn't, the way I'm set up and way my sexual desires are set up, which are from God and they're healthy because I'm a human being, I can't do that. It's not going to work for me in my personal walk in sexual purity. So I'd be like, yo, I don't even want to know what hotel you're at. I don't even know what floor you're at. Meet me at the location, or we can go out with a group of friends on a vacation and I stay with my girlfriends, but the way my hormones set up, the way I'm set up, it's not gonna work. I tried it, it didn't work. So
Yo, that's real. That's real talk. That's real talk. Yo, that was great. So let's see. I think we had one other comment. Oh, yeah, they were talking about Morgan. They must have went and checked out your channel, Morgan. They're like, yo, sis is out here YouTube famous. And Dojo is like, yo, Morgan J, how can we get YouTube stardom like you, sis? So yeah, I mean, Morgan is doing amazing work on her channel, man. If you guys haven't already, definitely check it out. Show her some love and support, man. Amazing, amazing work, Morgan. Just keep up the outstanding work. So a few other chat questions. Oh yeah, as y'all can see, MSM who asked the question, she was saying, yes, that's good. She really enjoyed the answers that you guys provided. Tiffany says, honestly, if you share a room with a man you are attracted to, you will be tempted and going to fall. That's more than likely gonna happen for sure. And MSN once again says, thank you so much for providing your viewpoints. Yes, indeed. So before we wrap up, coming over to each of you ladies to close us out, give us your last thoughts or any last questions that you may have for me or one another. So let's come over to you, Destiny.
Honestly, it just goes back to, like I was saying, like at the very beginning, of with sexual boundaries, you need to have boundaries in other areas. So even just backing to that like last question, you need to have those boundaries in place of, you know what? No. Because if not, then you do. As like Morgan was saying, they're pressing on your boundaries. And every time you allow them to press, that's just going to keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And every time you allow that to be bent, it gets harder and harder to say no, especially as that relationship progresses in your feelings towards them, because especially as women, you don't want to hurt people. You're like, oh, I don't want to hurt him. I got to be nice. Or like there's the part in culture, like if you have fallen short before of like, oh, he kissed me. Well, then I guess I have to, like, I know I had a friend who is like very strong in the Baptist culture, and like a guy kissed her. She's like, well, now I have to marry him because if not, it's going to be a sin, because like he kissed me. And like we have these points of view, and it's really taking out what have may been indoctrinated to us or like twisted points of view and taking it back to what is truth. And truth is a very hard thing, especially in our culture where we try to just create our own truths. We are living in a culture, in a century, where we are taking our own opinions and labeling them as truths, and we are becoming gods of our own perspectives rather than going back to the truth and the true Yeshua that is. Because even if you don't believe in God and even if you disown him, it doesn't change the fact that he's still there, and at the end of time, every deed is going to be judged, good or bad, under the sun, hidden or seen. And so with that, it just really goes back to, what are you basing it off of? And are you basing it off of a guilty pleasure of a sin, of because it's what you want and that's what you're feeling tonight? Or are you basing it off of truth? And the things that are worth it in life are going to be hard. The best things in life are going to be hard. To run a marathon, you can't just wake up one morning and decide to do it. You have to train. And that is what your sanctification process is. It is running the race for life. And it's a difficult path. And difficult doesn't mean all joys and smiles. Difficult usually means sometimes you're in a corner crying your eyes out because you don't know what's going to happen next. And there are times, like in my personal walk with like boundaries, like I've gotten frustrated. I'm like, why? Like, I don't want to have to let down my guard. Or there's been the flip side, as I let down my guard, I start feeling safe, and it's like, oh, I really want to cuddle with you right now, but I'm going to choose not to do that because that's what I don't feel is honoring. But yeah.
Nah, that's good. Thank you again, Destiny. Once again, you guys, you can find the link to her YouTube channel in the description, so you can go and show Destiny some love and support. And we had a comment that came in from Tiffany. She said, great show, Jay, Tatiana, Destiny, and Morgan. Also very insightful questions from Dojo of Manhood. Yes, indeed. It was a really good show. Morgan, coming over to you. What are your last words to close us out tonight?
My last thing, girl, is try the spirit by the spirit. If this man is saying that he's a man of God and that he is trying to pursue you, try that spirit, test that thing, watch to see the fruit that he produces. And also, just don't jump into anything too soon. Use wisdom. We are sometimes hot bodied, like we just ready to get married because we've been doing purity for so long. I've been there. I know all about this. And the reality is sometimes you will throw wisdom out the door, and you will just run ahead when all the red flags and the red signs are right in front of you. So my biggest encouragement to you is try the spirit by the spirit. And boo, to be honest with you, quit worrying about that boy and get focused on your purpose and watch him just come through the door on his own time. and then you won't need him to save you or protect you or be with all the others. Like, I need you to save me, because Jesus already saved you. You just need him to come and fulfill the role that he was supposed to fulfill in your life. Okay, so find your purpose, find Jesus, and you'll be good.
Yo, appreciate you for sharing that, Morgan. Such a pleasure having you and Destiny on the show with us. Tatiana, any last or closing words you want to leave us with before you wrap up tonight?
I just want to thank the ladies for their amazing insight tonight. Thank you, Destiny and Morgan. We appreciate you all for joining us on the panel. The guests, our guests were amazing guest panelists, our commenters, our chat family at this point was amazing, challenging us and sharing their stories as well. We appreciate you all. I'll just say that I really did get time to touch on this, but I definitely want to point out that we don't want to over spiritualize sexuality as well. Like, we don't be like, oh, a man of God would never want to have sex with me. He's gonna try it. Temptation hits everybody. If you are in a relationship with someone and you guys are pushing towards marriage and that's the goal for you both want that, there are going to be temptations. As any engaged people, they will tell you, like, it gets more intense when you get closer to the wedding day. So don't think it's strange if they try to push up on you. Again, you need to be responsible for yourself as a single person and stay true to those boundaries that you set before you even got into a relationship with them. So yeah, temptation hits everyone. Give grace to that person. But if they are basically, like, not honoring your boundaries consistently, they're just blatantly disrespecting it, then you need to have another conversation and probably got to peace out. But give grace and be wise. That's what I will say with that.
Nah, that's good. Ladies, thank you again. Destiny, Morgan, such a pleasure having you on the live show with us tonight. Tatiana, so glad to have you back with us. Chat, y'all were on fire tonight. Shout out to every last one of y'all. We appreciate you. Shout out to JD for joining us up on the live stream today. Shout out to my man, the MVP of the chat today, my man Black Belt, Dojo of Manhood. But we'll be back next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time with another Right to Real Love live show. We got new guests lined up and another hot topic, so you definitely don't want to miss it. Until then, we'll catch you guys next week. Stay blessed.